Hello guys, welcome to Potter Paradox. So in this video, we will see what if Petunia hired a goblin accountant at age 8 who found Harry owned 15 properties Dumbledore was renting out. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Goblin's Audit. Get down here and cook breakfast, boy. Vernon Dursley's voice thundered up the stairs to the cupboard under them. 8-year-old Harry Potter jerked awake, his glasses askew on his face from having fallen asleep wearing them again. He fumbled in the darkness, found the string for the bare bulb overhead, and pulled it. The dim light revealed his bedroom, a cupboard barely large enough to contain the thin mattress he slept on, with spiders dangling from the ceiling and dusty shelves crammed with cleaning supplies. "Coming, Uncle Vernon," he called, pulling on Dudley's oversized hand-me-downs as quickly as possible. Harry hurried into the kitchen, where Uncle Vernon sat behind his newspaper, his massive frame making the kitchen chair creak ominously. Aunt Petunia stood by the counter, her horse-like face pinched with worry as she stared at a stack of envelopes. "About time," she snapped, but without her usual venom. Something was off. Harry started the bacon frying, keeping his head down. He'd learned years ago that asking questions only made things worse. But he couldn't help noticing that his aunt and uncle kept exchanging worried glances when they thought he wasn't looking. "Vernon," Petunia hissed, pushing a letter toward her husband. "It's the second notice." Vernon's face purpled. "Grunnings is just going through a rough patch. Nothing to worry about." But Harry could tell there was plenty to worry about from the way Vernon's hands shook as he folded the newspaper. That, and the fact that his uncle had been coming home earlier these past weeks, muttering about cutbacks and restructuring. Harry served breakfast with practiced efficiency, making sure Dudley's portion was significantly larger than his own. As he ate his meager helping, he caught more snippets of his aunt and uncle's whispered conversation. "Might have to sell the second car. What will the neighbors think? Mortgage payment, money troubles." The Dursleys were facing money troubles. Harry felt a tiny spark of vindictive pleasure at the thought of his materialistic relatives having to tighten their belts, but it was quickly extinguished. If the Dursleys had less money, that meant even less for him. Smaller portions, fewer new clothes, if that was even possible, and certainly more blame headed his way. Somehow, this would end up being his fault. The morning followed its usual pattern. Uncle Vernon left for work, his goodbye kiss to Aunt Petunia noticeably less enthusiastic than normal. Dudley departed for school with a lunchbox stuffed to bursting, while Harry got a sandwich that was more bread than filling. But something changed in the routine when Aunt Petunia, instead of sending Harry off to school with a customary warning not to do any funny business, called him back. "You'll be going to Mrs. Figg's after school today," she said sharply. "I have errands." Harry nodded, trying not to let his disappointment show. Mrs. Figg wasn't terrible, but her house smelled of cabbage and cats, and she always made him look at photos of every feline she'd ever owned. School was the usual mix of trying to learn while avoiding Dudley and his gang. Harry had become adept at disappearing during breaks, finding hidden corners of the playground where his cousin couldn't find him. He was small for his age, which made hiding easier but running away harder. Not that running ever did much good. Dudley might be as wide as he was tall, but he had plenty of friends to corner Harry. After school, Harry trudged to Mrs. Figg's house on Wisteria Walk. The elderly woman welcomed him with a distracted smile. Come in, come in. I've just made some fruitcake." Harry suppressed a groan. Mrs. Figg's fruitcake was legendary for all the wrong reasons. "Thank you, Mrs. Figg," he said politely. For hours, 3 pieces of cement-like fruitcake, and 2 complete albums of cat photographs later, Harry heard Aunt Petunia's sharp knock at the door. "Thank you for watching the boy," she said to Mrs. Figg, not even glancing at Harry. "No trouble at all. Such a quiet child." Harry followed his aunt out, noticing immediately that something had changed. She walked differently, her back straighter, her steps lighter. When they reached the end of Wisteria Walk, she did something she'd never done before. She looked both ways, then actually took Harry's hand. "Aunt Petunia?" he questioned, startled by this unprecedented physical contact. "Be quiet," she hissed, but again, without her usual malice. "I've had a very interesting day, and we need to talk before your uncle gets home." Harry's mind raced. Had he done something wrong? Was he being sent away? Had the school called about the incident last week when he'd somehow ended up on the roof while running from Dudley? But Aunt Petunia didn't look angry. She looked excited. No, that couldn't be right. His aunt was never excited about anything related to him. They reached number 4, and Petunia ushered Harry inside quickly, peering up and down the street as if worried they were being watched. Once the door closed, she turned to him. "Go to your cupboard," she said, stumbling slightly over the word. "I'll call you when dinner's ready." Harry obeyed, thoroughly confused. Through the slats in his cupboard door, he watched his aunt move around the kitchen with unusual energy, occasionally stopping to look at a piece of paper she kept pulling from her pocket. Dinner that night was strange. Dudley monopolized the conversation as usual, boasting about pushing a smaller kid into the mud, but neither Vernon nor Petunia seemed to be paying attention. Vernon looked exhausted and worried, picking at his food. Petunia kept glancing at Harry, then quickly looking away when he noticed. After Dudley had been planted in front of the television and Vernon had retreated to his armchair with the evening paper, Petunia approached Harry as he washed the dishes. "Your uncle and I need to discuss something important with you," she said in a low voice. "After Dudley goes to bed." Harry nearly dropped a plate. In his entire life at number 4, he'd never been included in a family discussion. "Yes, Aunt Petunia," he managed to reply. The hours crawled by. Harry finished the dishes, cleaned the kitchen, and was sent to his cupboard to wait. He heard Dudley's heavy footsteps as he went upstairs, followed by the blare of his television. Eventually, that too fell silent. At 9:30, the cupboard door opened. "Come into the living room," Aunt Petunia said. Uncle Vernon sat in his armchair, his face an interesting shade somewhere between red and purple. He didn't look at Harry as the boy entered. "Sit down," Petunia directed, pointing at the sofa. Harry perched on the edge, ready to bolt if necessary. Whatever this was about, it couldn't be good. "I've made a discovery today," Petunia began, her voice unusually controlled. "About your situation." Harry stayed silent, knowing interruptions weren't welcome. "Vernon's company is going through some adjustments," she continued, throwing a glance at her husband, who grunted. "And it got me thinking about financial planning. About what resources might be available to us that we hadn't considered." Vernon's grunt turned into a growl. "Just get on with it, Petunia." "Yes, well." She straightened her already perfect posture. "I was at the shopping center in London today, and I overheard some people." "Your kind of people." The last words were directed at Harry with a meaningful look. Harry blinked. His kind of people. Did she mean? "They were discussing financial matters," Petunia continued. "Specifically, they mentioned Goblin accountants." Vernon made a choking sound. "I still don't like this, Petunia." "Hush, Vernon. Necessity dictates action." She turned back to Harry. "Is that term familiar to you, boy? Goblin accountants?" Harry shook his head, thoroughly confused now. "No, Aunt Petunia." "Well, it seems that in your world," she struggled to say the word, "banking is handled by goblins. And from what I gathered, they offer accountancy services that are particularly thorough." Harry's mind whirled. Goblins? Banking? What world was she talking about? "I followed these people, discreetly of course," Petunia continued. "They led me to a shabby little pub that normal people couldn't seem to see. The Leaky Cauldron." She pronounced the name with distaste. "I waited outside until someone else came out, someone who looked somewhat respectable, and I asked them about Goblin accountants. Vernon's face was now an alarming shade of puce. Consorting with freaks, he muttered. It was necessary, Petunia snapped. The woman explained that Gringotts, that's their bank, offers accounting services. She gave me instructions on how to contact them. Petunia reached into her pocket and withdrew a business card that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. I wrote to them this afternoon, she continued. And received a response within the hour. By owl. She shuddered slightly. They're sending someone tomorrow morning to discuss your financial situation. Harry found his voice at last. My financial situation? Yes, Petunia said, fixing him with a piercing look. It seems that your parents may have left you some assets. Assets that, as your guardians, we might be entitled to access for your care. Vernon finally spoke up. What your aunt is saying, boy, is that we've been feeding and clothing you for 7 years with no compensation. If there's money that should have been coming to us, we want to know about it. Harry's head spun. His parents had left him money. All these years of being told they were worthless drunks who died in a car crash, and now suddenly they had money. But, why now, he asked. Because we need it now, Vernon growled. And we should have had it all along. If those freakish people have been holding out on us, that's enough, Vernon, Petunia cut in. The point is, Harry, that a goblin accountant will be coming here tomorrow at 10 o'clock sharp. You will be present, and you will be cooperative. Is that understood? Yes, Aunt Petunia, Harry replied automatically, his mind still reeling. Good. Now go to your cupboard. And not a word of this to anyone. Harry lay awake for hours that night, staring at the underside of the stairs. Goblins were real. Magic was real. It had to be, if there were banks run by goblins and pubs that normal people couldn't see. And his parents, they weren't what he'd been told. They had money. They had been part of this hidden world. Why had no one ever told him? Morning came too slowly. Harry was awake before dawn, listening to the house creaking around him. When he heard Aunt Petunia's footsteps on the stairs, he was already dressed and ready. To his surprise, when she opened his cupboard door, she was holding clothes he'd never seen before. Put these on, she said, thrusting them at him. We need to make a good impression. The clothes were new. Not Dudley's hand-me-downs, but actually new. A simple button-up shirt and trousers that looked like they might actually fit him. Harry changed quickly, marveling at the feeling of wearing clothes that didn't hang off him like elephant skin. Breakfast was another surprise. Aunt Petunia gave him a full plate, eggs, bacon, toast, the works. Uncle Vernon watched with obvious disapproval but said nothing. Dudley, naturally, complained loudly that Harry was getting special treatment. Hush, Duddekins, Petunia soothed. It's just for today. Harry needs to look presentable for some people who are coming to see us. What people? Dudley demanded through a mouthful of food. Boring grown-up people, Vernon grunted. You'll be going to Pierre's house to play. This mollified Dudley somewhat, though he still glared at Harry's plate as if the extra food was being stolen directly from him. At 9:30, Petunia sent Dudley off to his friend's house with instructions not to return until called. Then she set about cleaning the already spotless living room, adjusting cushions and dusting surfaces that gleamed. Sit there and don't move, she instructed Harry, pointing to the sofa. And remember, be polite and answer any questions truthfully. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Petunia jumped slightly, then smoothed her dress and went to answer it. Harry heard her gasp, followed by a moment of silence. Yes, yes, please come in, her voice floated back, sounding strained. Harry's eyes widened as the living room door opened to admit the strangest person he'd ever seen. Standing about 4 feet tall was what could only be a goblin, swarthy-skinned with a pointed face, large ears, and clever dark eyes. He wore an impeccably tailored suit and carried a briefcase that appeared to be made from some exotic leather. Behind the goblin came Aunt Petunia, looking as though she might faint at any moment. Mr. Harry Potter, the Goblin said, fixing Harry with a penetrating stare. I am Griphook, Senior Accounts Manager at Gringotts. I understand you wish to discuss your financial holdings. Uncle Vernon made a strangled noise from his armchair. Yes. I mean, my aunt contacted you, Harry stammered, completely out of his depth. Griphook nodded sharply. Indeed she did. Most unusual, but not unprecedented. He placed his briefcase on the coffee table and clicked it open. I have conducted a preliminary audit of your accounts based on the inquiry. His accounts? Vernon finally found his voice. How many accounts does the boy have? Griphook ignored him completely, addressing only Harry. Mr. Potter, before I proceed, I must verify your identity. A simple matter, a drop of blood on this parchment will suffice. He produced a golden needle and a piece of yellowed parchment from his briefcase. Blood? Petunia squeaked. Magical contracts require magical binding, Griphook explained dismissively. One drop is all that's needed. Harry hesitated only briefly before extending his hand. Griphook pricked his finger with surprising gentleness, then pressed it to the parchment. To Harry's amazement, the drop of blood spread out in thin lines, forming words: Harry James Potter born, July 31, 1980 father, James Fleamont Potter, deceased, mother, Lily Evans Potter, deceased, heir to, the ancient and noble house of Potter, identity confirmed, Griphook said with satisfaction. Now, to business. What followed was the most extraordinary hour of Harry's life. Griphook produced ledger after ledger from his seemingly bottomless briefcase, explaining each in a brisk, no-nonsense manner. The Potter family vault, containing approximately 3.2 million galleons in liquid assets. At the current exchange rate of £4.97 per galleon, that's approximately £16 million sterling. Vernon made a sound like a balloon deflating. The Potter Trust Vault, established for your education and maintenance until age 17, containing 50,000 galleons. Investment portfolio, primarily in magical businesses but with some Muggle holdings as well, valued at approximately 1.8 million galleons. And finally, Potter Properties. Griphook looked up from his ledgers, his expression suddenly sharp. This is where we found significant irregularities, Mr. Potter. Irregularities? Harry asked, trying to wrap his mind around the fact that he was apparently a millionaire. Yes. Griphook's voice took on an edge. According to our records, you own 15 properties throughout Britain. All of these properties have been under the management of one Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore since your parents' deaths. Dumbledore? Petunia's voice was faint. Indeed. Griphook shuffled through his papers and produced a list. These properties include the Potter family manor in Godric's Hollow, the cottage in Godric's Hollow where your parents last resided, 3 London townhouses, a castle in Scotland, a villa in southern France, a hunting lodge in the Scottish Highlands, 2 shops in Diagon Alley, a flat in Hogsmeade Village, 4 additional residential properties throughout England, and this Dumbledore person has been managing them? Vernon asked, leaning forward with sudden interest. Managing is a generous term, Griphook replied with a sneer. Mr. Dumbledore has been collecting rental income from 14 of these properties. The cottage in Godric's Hollow has been established as a historical monument, for which admission is charged. And where has this money been going? Petunia asked. Not into any of Mr. Potter's accounts, Griphook stated flatly. We estimate the misappropriated funds to total approximately 920,000 galleons over the past 7 years. That's... Harry tried to do the math in his head. Nearly £5 million, Griphook supplied. Plus interest. Vernon's eyes bulged. £5 million? That old man has stolen £5 million from the boy. It would appear so, Griphook agreed. Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. As Mr. Potter's magical guardian, Dumbledore had certain rights to manage his estate. However, he was required to act in Mr. Potter's best interests and to provide accountings of all transactions. He has done neither. Magical guardian? Harry questioned. What's that? In the wizarding world, orphan children are assigned a magical guardian to oversee their magical education and well-being, Griphook explained. Dumbledore appointed himself your magical guardian after your parents' deaths. Your aunt and uncle are your legal guardians in the Muggle world. Muggle? Vernon asked. Non-magical, Griphook clarified. As I was saying, Dumbledore has significantly overstepped his authority. As Mr. Potter's blood relatives and legal guardians, you have the right to challenge his magical guardianship and demand a full accounting of his actions. Petunia and Vernon exchanged a look that Harry couldn't quite interpret. And if we do that, Vernon said slowly, what happens to the properties? And the money? Control would revert to Mr. Potter, with you as his legal guardians having oversight until he reaches magical majority at 17, Griphook explained. You would be entitled to reasonable compensation for his care, of course. Reasonable compensation, Vernon repeated, his eyes gleaming. And what would that entail? Griphook consulted another document. Standard guardianship compensation is set at 1,000 galleons per annum, retroactive to when guardianship began. That would be approximately 7,000 galleons, or £34,790 currently owed to you, plus 1,000 galleons per year moving forward. Vernon looked like Christmas had come early. Petunia's pinched expression had softened into something almost pleasant. But what about the stolen money? Harry asked. Can we get it back from this Dumbledore person? Griphook's lips curled into what might have been a smile, revealing pointed teeth. That, Mr. Potter, is precisely why I'm here. Gringotts takes a very dim view of financial impropriety. If you authorize us to act on your behalf, we can pursue full recovery of misappropriated funds, with interest. And your fee for this service? Petunia asked shrewdly. 10% of recovered funds, Griphook replied promptly. But we also offer a comprehensive account management package that would prevent such abuses in the future. For that, our fee is 3% of annual returns on investments. Harry looked at his aunt and uncle. They were clearly calculating figures in their heads, dollar signs practically visible in their eyes. He felt a sudden surge of something he rarely experienced, power. Could I see the properties? He asked Griphook directly. I mean, could I visit them? Griphook looked momentarily surprised but nodded. Of course, Mr. Potter. They are your properties, after all. We could arrange tours at your convenience. I'd like that, Harry said firmly. And I want to know more about my parents. And this, wizarding world. Vernon's face darkened, but Petunia laid a restraining hand on his arm. That seems reasonable, she said carefully. After all, if the boy is to manage his inheritance someday, he should understand it. Harry couldn't believe his ears. Was Aunt Petunia actually supporting him? Excellent, Griphook said. Then if you're amenable, I suggest the following course of action. First, we file formal papers challenging Dumbledore's guardianship. Second, we initiate recovery proceedings for the misappropriated funds. Third, we establish proper access to Mr. Potter's accounts for legitimate expenses related to his care and education. And when could we? I mean, when could Harry access these funds? Vernon asked, barely concealing his eagerness. The trust vault can be accessed immediately, Griphook answered. It was specifically established for Harry's education and maintenance. For that, we would simply need to visit Gringotts so that Mr. Potter can claim his key. Visit? Petunia's voice rose slightly. You mean, go to your bank? Yes, Mrs. Dursley. Gringotts is located in Diagon Alley, the wizarding shopping district in London. It would be a simple matter to arrange transportation. Petunia and Vernon exchanged another look, having one of those silent marital conversations that Harry could never quite decipher. If it's absolutely necessary, Vernon finally grunted. It is, Griphook confirmed. Certain magical bindings can only be broken or established in person. Then we'll go, Petunia decided. When? Today would be ideal, Griphook replied. The sooner we begin proceedings, the less opportunity Dumbledore will have to cover his tracks. Today? Vernon protested. But I have work, and Dudley can stay with Mrs. Fig, Petunia cut in. This is more important, Vernon. Think of what's at stake. Harry watched this exchange with fascination. He'd never seen his aunt override his uncle before. Money, it seemed, was a more powerful motivator than hatred of magic. Fine, Vernon conceded. But I'm not dealing with any funny business. I'll drive us to London, but Petunia, you'll have to take the boy into this diagonally place. Diagon Alley, Griphook corrected. And that won't be necessary, Mr. Dursley. Gringotts can provide transportation. In fact. He pulled out a pocket watch and checked it. I've taken the liberty of arranging a port key for 11:30. That gives us just enough time to complete the preliminary paperwork. A what? Vernon asked suspiciously. A magical transportation device, Griphook explained. It will take us directly to the bank. Vernon paled. Magical transport. Now see here, it's perfectly safe, Griphook assured him, though his tone suggested he couldn't care less about Vernon's concerns. And significantly more efficient than Muggle transportation. The next 20 minutes were spent signing various documents that Griphook produced from his briefcase. Harry, having never signed anything important before, took great care with each signature. Aunt Petunia signed as his legal guardian, her hand trembling slightly. Dudley was quickly deposited with Mrs. Fig, who seemed surprised to be asked to babysit on such short notice but agreed readily enough. Vernon called in sick to work, grumbling all the while about abnormal nonsense. At exactly 11:30, Griphook produced a tarnished old key. This is our port key, he explained. Everyone must touch it. One finger is sufficient. When I give the word, it will activate. Harry, Petunia, and Vernon, looking distinctly green, each placed a finger on the key. Griphook checked his watch one final time. 3, 2, 1. Harry felt a sudden jerk behind his navel, as if he'd been hooked by an invisible fishing line. The living room of number 4, Privet Drive disappeared in a swirl of color and sound. He was spinning, flying, his fingers stuck to the key as if by superglue. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. Harry's feet slammed into marble flooring, and he staggered, nearly falling. A strong hand steadied him, Griphook's. First-time port key users often lose their balance, the Goblin remarked, not unkindly. You did quite well, Mr. Potter. The same could not be said for the Dursleys. Aunt Petunia had crumpled to her knees, white as a sheet. Uncle Vernon was on all fours, making alarming retching noises. Welcome to Gringotts, Griphook announced, gesturing around them. Harry looked up and gasped. They stood in the most magnificent hall he'd ever seen. Vast marble columns soared to a ceiling so high it was difficult to make out. Hundreds of goblins sat at long counters, counting piles of gold, examining jewels through eyepieces, or scratching in massive ledgers with quill pens. Witches and wizards in robes of every color moved about the hall, conducting their business with purposeful strides. This way, please, Griphook directed, leading them toward a side corridor. Senior Account Manager Ragnarok is expecting us. Aunt Petunia got shakily to her feet, helping Uncle Vernon up as well. They followed Griphook with obvious reluctance, staring around with a mixture of fear and amazement. The corridor led to a large, ornate door with the name Ragnarok inscribed in gold. Griphook knocked 3 times, and the door swung open silently. Inside was an office that radiated wealth and power. The walls were lined with shelves of leather-bound books and gleaming artifacts. Behind an enormous desk of dark wood sat an older goblin with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes. Ah, the Potter account, Ragnarok said, his voice surprisingly deep. Please, be seated. 3 chairs appeared before the desk, and Harry, Petunia, and Vernon sat down cautiously. Griphook has briefed me on the situation, Ragnock continued, steepling his long fingers. Most irregular. Most irregular indeed. Albus Dumbledore has enjoyed a positive relationship with Gringotts for many decades. To find him involved in financial impropriety of this magnitude is concerning. What will happen to him? Harry asked. Ragnock fixed him with a penetrating stare. That, Mr. Potter, depends largely on you. As the injured party, you have several options. You could demand full financial restitution with punitive damages, which would likely bankrupt him. You could press criminal charges in the wizarding courts, which might result in imprisonment. Or you could seek a negotiated settlement. I don't want to bankrupt anyone, Harry said quickly. I just want what's mine, and to understand why he did it. Ragnock nodded approvingly. A measured response. Commendable in one so young. He turned to the Dursleys. And what are your thoughts, as Mr. Potter's guardians? Vernon opened his mouth, likely to demand maximum punishment and payment, but Petunia spoke first. We want what's best for Harry, she said, in a tone that made Harry look at her in shock. And we want to ensure that his parents' wishes for his upbringing are respected. If Ragnock was surprised by this answer, he didn't show it. Very well. Then I propose the following plan of action. First, we will conduct a comprehensive inheritance ritual to formally establish Mr. Potter's claim to the Potter estate. This will automatically trigger notifications to the Ministry of Magic and to Albus Dumbledore. Second, we will place a temporary freeze on all Potter properties, halting any rental income until ownership is fully established. Third, we will draft a formal demand for accounting to Dumbledore, giving him 7 days to respond before we escalate to the Wizengamot. The what? Vernon asked. The Wizarding High Court, Ragnock explained. But first things first. Mr. Potter, if you would step over to the ritual circle. He gestured to a circular area of the office floor where strange symbols were inlaid in gold. Harry stood and moved to the circle, his heart pounding. This was all happening so fast, and yet it felt right somehow. Like he was finally connecting with a part of himself that had been hidden away. Place a drop of blood on the central rune, Ragnock instructed, offering another golden needle. Harry did as instructed, watching in fascination as his blood seemed to sink into the gold, causing all the symbols to glow with an eerie light. Now, repeat after me. I, Harry James Potter, claim my birthright as heir to the ancient and noble house of Potter. Harry repeated the words, his voice stronger than he expected. The glowing symbols flared brightly, then shot upward in a column of golden light that enveloped him completely. He felt a warm, tingling sensation wash over him, like stepping into sunshine after being in shadow. Then the light faded, and Harry felt different. More solid somehow, more certain of himself. Well done, Ragnock said, looking satisfied. The ritual has accepted you as the Potter heir. The notifications have been sent, and the freeze on your properties is now in effect. Is that it? Harry asked. I thought it would be more complicated. Ragnock's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. Magic, Mr. Potter, recognizes its own. No amount of paperwork or manipulation can override the bond between a hereditary magic user and their family legacy. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Harry was taken to his trust vault, where he saw gold coins piled higher than his head. He was given a special pouch that connected directly to his vault, allowing him to withdraw funds as needed. The Dursleys were issued a separate pouch for reasonable guardian expenses, with built-in limits that made Vernon scowl but accept nonetheless. Harry also learned more about the wizarding world in those few hours than in his entire life. Griphook, who seemed to have taken a liking to him, explained the basics of wizarding currency, the function of the Ministry of Magic, and the general structure of magical society. Normally, Muggle-raised wizards receive this information when they turn 11 and are invited to attend Hogwarts, Griphook explained. But given your unique situation and status, early education seems prudent. Status? Harry questioned. Harry, Aunt Petunia interjected suddenly, there are things about your parents' deaths that we haven't told you. Harry stared at her, surprised by the admission. They didn't die in a car crash, did they? Petunia flinched. No. They were murdered. By a dark wizard called Lord Voldemort, Griphook supplied when Petunia seemed unable to continue. A terrorist who sought to overthrow the wizarding government and establish pure-blood supremacy. Pure blood? Harry asked. Wizards who have no Muggle ancestry, Griphook explained. A ridiculous distinction, as magic itself cares nothing for bloodlines. And this Voldemort killed my parents? Why? Griphook and Petunia exchanged an uncomfortable look. There was a prophecy, Petunia finally said. Lily told me about it, in one of her letters. About a child who would defeat the Dark Lord. He believed it was you, and so he tried to kill you too. But he failed, Griphook added. You survived a killing curse, something that was thought to be impossible. Voldemort was destroyed, and you became famous as the boy who lived. Harry touched the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. This isn't from a car crash either, is it? No, Petunia admitted. It's where the curse struck you. Harry sat in stunned silence, trying to process this information. His parents hadn't died in some drunk driving accident, they'd been murdered protecting him. And he was famous in the wizarding world, a world he knew nothing about. Why didn't you tell me? He finally asked Petunia. His aunt looked away. We hoped if we kept you away from all that, you'd be normal. That the magic wouldn't take hold. That's not how magic works, Mrs. Dursley, Griphook said, not unkindly. Magic is innate, not learned. Mr. Potter has been a wizard since birth. I know that now, Petunia snapped, but without real heat. And clearly, keeping him ignorant hasn't worked out well for anyone. Vernon, who had been unusually quiet during these revelations, finally spoke up. So the boy's famous, has a fortune, and owns a dozen properties. That changes things. Does it? Harry asked, a note of bitterness creeping into his voice. Will I get Dudley's second bedroom now instead of the cupboard under the stairs? Petunia had the grace to look ashamed. Vernon's face flushed, but whether from anger or embarrassment was hard to tell. Cupboard under the stairs. Griphook repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Yes, Harry confirmed. That's my bedroom. Has been since I was left on their doorstep. Griphook's eyes narrowed. I see. Mrs. Dursley, Mr. Dursley, might I remind you that as Mr. Potter's guardians, you have a legal and moral obligation to provide appropriate care. Care for which you are now being retroactively compensated. Petunia's face paled. We've never mistreated the boy. He's been fed, clothed, in cast-offs and leftovers, Harry interrupted, emboldened by the Goblin's support. And locked in the cupboard whenever I did accidental magic. That's enough, Vernon growled. The boy's exaggerating. And whatever's happened in the past, things will be different now. We understand the situation better. Indeed, Griphook said coldly. And I'm sure you understand that Gringotts takes a keen interest in the welfare of its significant clients. Mr. Potter's living conditions will be subject to periodic review as part of our account management services. The threat was thinly veiled but effective. Both Dursleys nodded quickly. Excellent, Griphook said. Now, I believe we've concluded our immediate business. Unless you have other questions, Mr. Potter. Harry thought for a moment. When can I see the properties? We can arrange a tour for this weekend, if that's convenient, Griphook replied. I would suggest starting with the London townhouses, as they're closest. And can I buy some books about magic? And the wizarding world? Certainly. Diagon Alley has several excellent bookshops. In fact, Griphook checked his pocket watch, we have time for a brief tour before returning you to Privet Drive, if you wish. Yes please. Harry said eagerly. Vernon looked like he wanted to object but stayed silent after a sharp look from Petunia. A short tour, she agreed. The boy should know where to find things he might need. And so, after signing a few final documents, Harry found himself stepping out of Gringotts and into Diagon Alley for the first time. The wizarding shopping district was like nothing he'd ever imagined, colorful, chaotic, and utterly magical. Shops selling cauldrons, telescopes, strange magical instruments, and creatures Harry couldn't name lined the cobblestone street. Witches and wizards in robes bustled about their business, occasionally stopping to peer into windows or greet acquaintances. Flourish and blots for books, Griphook pointed out, Madame Malkin's for robes, though you won't need those yet. Ollivander's is where you'll get your wand when you turn 11. Quality Quidditch supplies for sporting equipment, flying brooms and such. Flying brooms? Harry repeated, his eyes wide. People really fly on broomsticks? It's a popular sport, Griphook confirmed. Your father was quite talented at it, from what I understand. Harry soaked in every detail, asking questions constantly. Petunia followed at a distance, clearly uncomfortable but making an effort. Vernon had refused to leave Gringotts, choosing instead to wait in a private room the goblins provided. In Flourish and Blots, Harry selected several books, Hogwarts, a history, modern magical history, which apparently included a chapter on him, Magical Theory for Beginners, and The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts. Petunia added, A Muggle's Guide to Magical Parenting, looking slightly embarrassed as she did so. As they were paying for their purchases, Harry heard someone call his name. Harry? Harry Potter. He turned to see a plump, friendly-looking woman with bright red hair, accompanied by a young girl about his age who had the same vivid hair color. Oh my goodness, it is you, the woman exclaimed. I'd recognize you anywhere, you look just like your father, except for your eyes. You have Lily's eyes. You knew my parents? Harry asked, startled. Molly Weasley, dear. Yes, I knew them, not well, but we were all in the Order together during the war. And this is my daughter, Ginny. The girl blushed furiously and seemed unable to speak. Order? Harry questioned. The Order of the Phoenix, Mrs. Weasley explained, then lowered her voice. Dumbledore's group that fought against you-know-who. Dumbledore, Harry repeated, a sudden chill in his voice. Mrs. Weasley looked confused by his tone. Yes, Albus Dumbledore. Surely you know about him. He's the headmaster at Hogwarts, where you'll be going in a few years. I know who he is, Harry said carefully. I've just learned some interesting things about him today. Mrs. Weasley looked even more confused, but before she could ask any questions, Petunia stepped forward. We need to be going, she said stiffly. It's getting late. Oh. Mrs. Weasley looked surprised at the Muggle woman's appearance. You must be Harry's aunt. I'm Molly Weasley. Petunia Dursley, Aunt Petunia replied with a tight nod. Harry's guardian. An awkward silence fell, broken only when the young girl, Ginny, finally found her voice. Do you really have the scar? She blurted out, then immediately looked mortified at her own boldness. Harry smiled and lifted his fringe to show the lightning bolt scar. Wicked, Ginny breathed. Ginny, manners, Mrs. Weasley admonished, though she was smiling. Well, it was lovely to meet you, Harry. Perhaps you could visit us at the Burrow sometime. Our Ron is your age, he'll be starting Hogwarts the same year as you. I'd like that, Harry said sincerely, before Aunt Petunia could object. Wonderful. I'll send you an owl with an invitation. An owl to Privet Drive might not be the best idea, Harry said quickly, remembering Uncle Vernon's likely reaction. Maybe I could write to you first. Of course, dear. Just address it to the Burrow, Ottery Street Catchpole. Any owl will find us. With final goodbyes, Harry and Petunia rejoined Griphook, who had been waiting discreetly nearby. The Weasleys, the Goblin commented as they made their way back to Gringotts. A good family, though not wealthy. Arthur Weasley works for the Ministry of Magic in the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office. They seemed nice, Harry said. They are known for their loyalty and courage, Griphook agreed. And for having more children than financial sense. They currently have 7, I believe. 7. Harry marveled. All boys except the youngest, whom you just met. Back at Gringotts, they collected Vernon, who looked immensely relieved to be leaving. Another Portkey journey, just as uncomfortable as the first, returned them to Privet Drive. As Griphook was preparing to leave, he handed Harry a small, mirror-like device. This is a communication mirror, he explained. If you have questions or concerns, simply speak my name while holding it, and I will respond when available. Thank you, Harry said sincerely. For everything today. Griphook inclined his head. It has been interesting, Mr. Potter. I look forward to our continued association. After the goblin departed, a heavy silence fell over number 4. Harry stood in the living room, his new books clutched to his chest, wondering what would happen next. Would things really change, or would the Dursleys revert to their old treatment of him once the shock wore off? Vernon cleared his throat. Boy. Harry. It seems we have some adjustments to make. Petunia nodded. Dudley's second bedroom will be yours from now on. I'll have him clear out his things this evening. And those clothes the goblin arranged for you, Vernon added, gesturing to the bank-issued credit card Griphook had provided for Harry's immediate needs. We'll go shopping this weekend. Can't have you looking like a ragamuffin if you're to be visiting those properties of yours. Harry nodded, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. And your chores, Petunia continued. You'll still have responsibilities, of course, but they'll be appropriate. The same as Dudley's. So none, then. Harry couldn't resist saying. Vernon's mustache twitched, but surprisingly, he almost smiled. Cheeky. But fair point. Both you boys will have reasonable chores from now on. Builds character. Harry nodded again, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. And those books, Petunia said, eyeing his purchases. You can read them, but keep them in your room. I don't want Dudley getting ideas. Yes, Aunt Petunia. And no talking about any of this to the neighbors or at school, Vernon added firmly. Our business is our business. Yes, Uncle Vernon. Another awkward silence fell. Then Petunia said, in a softer voice than Harry had ever heard her use toward him, your mother would be pleased that you're learning about your heritage. She was always so proud of it. Harry's throat tightened unexpectedly. You never talk about her. Petunia's lips pressed together. It's difficult. But perhaps that should change too. She straightened her shoulders. Go on up to your new room. I'll call you when dinner's ready. Harry climbed the stairs in a daze, hardly able to process everything that had happened in the past 8 hours. He opened the door to Dudley's second bedroom, his bedroom now, and set his books on the cluttered desk. The room was still filled with Dudley's broken toys and abandoned gadgets, but it was larger than the cupboard by far, with an actual bed and a window that looked out over the back garden. Sitting on the bed, Harry pulled out the communication mirror Griphook had given him and studied his own reflection. The same messy black hair, the same green eyes, the same lightning scar. But the boy looking back at him wasn't quite the same Harry Potter who had woken up in a cupboard that morning. This Harry Potter knew he was a wizard. Knew he was wealthy. Knew he had properties and a heritage and a place in a magical world. Knew that his parents hadn't died in a car crash, but had been murdered protecting him. Knew that some of the people he'd been taught to respect, like this Dumbledore person, might not deserve that respect. And most importantly, this Harry Potter had a plan. He would learn everything he could about the wizarding world before he turned 11. He would visit his properties and learn about his family's legacy. He would meet other magical children like the Weasleys. And he would find out exactly why Albus Dumbledore had been keeping him in the dark, in more ways than one. As if responding to his thoughts, the scar on his forehead gave a sudden, sharp twinge of pain. Harry rubbed it absently, not knowing that many miles away, in a castle in Scotland, an old man with a long white beard was receiving a series of increasingly alarming magical notifications about the boy who lived. The game, as they say, was afoot. Chapter 2, Properties and Prophecies. Harry woke up disoriented, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. Sunlight streamed through actual curtains, illuminating walls that weren't the underside of stairs. For one panicky moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then it all rushed back: Griphook, Gringotts, his inheritance, and yes, his new bedroom. He sat up, reaching for his glasses on the nightstand that had appeared sometime yesterday evening after Dudley had been forced to clear out his junk. The room still looked bare, just a bed, nightstand, desk, an empty bookshelf, but to Harry, it was a palace compared to his cupboard. A knock at the door made him jump. "Breakfast in 10 minutes, Aunt Petunia called, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. "Don't be late." "Yes, Aunt Petunia," Harry replied automatically. He dressed quickly in Dudley's hand-me-downs, making a mental note that they'd be going shopping for new clothes this weekend. Another surreal thought to add to the pile. When he entered the kitchen, he found the Dursleys already seated. Uncle Vernon hidden behind his newspaper, Aunt Petunia sipping tea, and Dudley glaring at him with undisguised resentment. "Why's he get my room?" Dudley demanded as soon as Harry sat down. "And why's he get new clothes? What's going on?" Vernon lowered his paper with a sigh. "Dudley, we've been through this. Your cousin has come into some money. Money that should have been supporting his upbringing all along. Things are going to be different now. But it's not fair." Dudley wailed. "It's my room." "You have a room," Petunia pointed out. "A larger one. And you've never used that one except to store broken things." "But they're my broken things." Harry ate his breakfast quietly, marveling at the equal portion size and the fact that no one was hurrying him along. Dudley continued to complain until Uncle Vernon finally lost patience. "Enough," he snapped. "This discussion is over. Now eat your breakfast and get ready for school." Dudley subsided into angry muttering, shooting venomous looks at Harry. The walk to school was uncomfortable, with Dudley refusing to acknowledge Harry's existence. But something had shifted in the cosmic balance of Harry's life. As they approached the school gates, Dudley's gang materialized as usual, but Harry felt none of the usual fear. "Why aren't you running, Potter?" Malcolm sneered, cracking his knuckles in what he clearly thought was a menacing manner. Harry considered the boy, who suddenly seemed smaller somehow. "Not today," he said simply, and walked past them. He heard Piers Polkiss say, "What's wrong with him?" followed by Dudley's sullen, "Leave him. He's being weird." The school day passed in a blur. Harry found it hard to concentrate on fractions and spelling when his mind was filled with goblins, magic, and inherited properties. During lunch break, he slipped away to a quiet corner of the playground and pulled out Hogwarts, a history, which he'd smuggled in his backpack. The book was fascinating: a castle with moving staircases, ghosts that taught classes, and 4 houses named after the founders. Harry was deep in the chapter about the sorting ceremony when a shadow fell across the page. "What's that you're reading?" Harry looked up to see Ms. Jenkins, his favorite teacher, peering at his book with curiosity. "Just a fantasy novel," he said quickly, closing it. "About a magic school." Ms. Jenkins smiled. "I didn't know you liked fantasy, Harry. You know, we have some great books in the library if you're interested." "Thanks, Ms. Jenkins. I'll check them out." She hesitated, then sat beside him on the bench. "Is everything all right at home, Harry? You seem different today." Harry considered the question. Was everything all right? His whole world had been turned upside down in the span of 24 hours. "Things are changing," he said carefully. "For the better, I think." Ms. Jenkins looked relieved. "I'm glad to hear that. If you ever need to talk, my door's always open. Thank you. As she walked away, Harry realized something. For years, teachers like Ms. Jenkins had noticed something wasn't right at the Dursleys, but nothing had ever come of their concerns. Had that been Dumbledore's influence too? Keeping the authorities from looking too closely at the boy who lives living conditions? The thought made his stomach clench. Just how much control had this man exerted over his life? When he arrived home that afternoon, Harry found Aunt Petunia waiting for him, an uncharacteristically anxious expression on her face. "That Goblin person called on the telephone," she said. "I didn't even know they could use telephones. He wants to take us to see one of your properties tomorrow. Saturday. Vernon and I have discussed it, and we think you should go." "Just me?" Harry asked, surprised. Petunia sniffed. "No, I'll accompany you. Vernon has to work overtime, and Dudley has a birthday party to attend." Harry nodded, trying to hide his excitement. "Which property?" "One of the London townhouses, I believe. We're to meet the Goblin at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. He's sending a car." The way she said it made it clear she wasn't entirely convinced it would be a normal car. Saturday morning arrived with Harry awake before dawn, too excited to sleep. He dressed in the least ragged of Dudley's hand-me-downs and attempted, unsuccessfully, to flatten his hair. At precisely 9 o'clock, a sleek black car pulled up outside number 4. The driver, to Harry's surprise, appeared to be human, a tall man in a chauffeur's uniform who introduced himself simply as Graves. "Mrs. Dursley, Mr. Potter," he said with a small bow. "Senior account manager Griphook sends his compliments and looks forward to meeting you at the property." The drive to London was quiet. Aunt Petunia sat stiffly beside Harry, clutching her handbag as if it might protect her from magical contamination. Harry stared out the window, wondering which of the buildings they passed might secretly house witches and wizards. After about an hour, the car turned onto a tree-lined street of elegant townhouses in what was clearly an expensive area of London. "Hampstead," Aunt Petunia murmured, looking impressed despite herself. "Very posh." The car stopped before a 4-story white townhouse with black shutters and a glossy front door. As they stepped out, the door opened to reveal Griphook, dressed in an impeccable Muggle suit. "Mr. Potter, Mrs. Dursley," he greeted them. "Welcome to number 17, Willow Crescent, one of the Potter family's London residences." They followed him into an entrance hall with gleaming hardwood floors and cream-colored walls adorned with paintings that, Harry realized with a start, were moving subtly, their subjects shifting position or even waving at him. "The property has been magically expanded, of course," Griphook explained, leading them deeper into the house. While it appears to be a standard townhouse from the outside, it contains approximately 6,000 square feet of living space internally. "That's impossible," Petunia muttered, though her wide eyes as they entered a vast, airy living room belied her skepticism. "Magic, Mrs. Dursley," Griphook replied simply. "This property has been in the Potter family for 3 generations. Your grandparents purchased it in 1937, Mr. Potter, as a London base for their international potions business." Harry ran his fingers along the back of a velvet sofa. "Did my parents live here?" "Occasionally. After their marriage, they divided their time between Potter Manor in the countryside, the cottage in Godric's Hollow, and this residence when business brought them to London. The house has been maintained by house elves since their deaths." "House elves?" Harry questioned. Before Griphook could answer, there was a loud crack, and a strange creature appeared before them. About 3 feet tall with bat-like ears, tennis ball-sized eyes, and wearing what looked like a miniature butler's uniform complete with the Potter crest, the creature bowed low. "Master Harry Potter, sir. Nipsey is being so happy to finally meet you. Nipsey has kept the house ready for Master Harry's return these many years." Aunt Petunia let out a small shriek and backed up until she hit a wall. "Harry Potter, this is Nipsey, the head house elf assigned to this property," Griphook introduced. "House elves are magical servants bound to wizarding families." "Servants?" Harry frowned. You mean like, slaves? Griphook's expression grew careful. The relationship is complex and not easily categorized by Muggle standards. House elves draw magic and sustenance from the family bond. Without it, they weaken and eventually die. In return, they provide service and loyalty. Harry looked at Nipsey uncertainly. It's nice to meet you, Nipsey. Are you treated well? Nipsey's enormous eyes welled with tears. Master asks if Nipsey is treated well. Such a kind wizard. Yes, Master Harry, the Potter family has always been good to their elves. We are proud to serve the ancient and noble House of Potter. How many house elves do I have? Harry asked Griphook. Currently 17, spread across your various properties. They've continued maintaining the estate since your parents' deaths, awaiting your eventual claim of your inheritance. Harry felt overwhelmed. Not only did he own multiple properties and have more money than he could imagine, but he was apparently also responsible for 17 magical creatures. Can I meet them all? I should know who works for me. Griphook looked surprised but nodded. A most unusual request, but certainly possible. Perhaps after we've toured all your properties. For the next 2 hours, they explored the townhouse. It contained 6 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a formal dining room, a study filled with magical books, a conservatory housing exotic magical plants, and a potions laboratory in the basement. Your mother often worked here, Griphook informed him as they examined the pristine lab. Lily Potter was a gifted potioneer. She was developing several innovative healing potions before her death. She was? Harry asked eagerly. What kind of potions? I'm not familiar with the specifics, but there should be research journals somewhere in the property. Nipsey might know. When asked, the house elf bobbed excitedly. Oh yes. Mistress Lily's journals are being in the study, in the secret drawer of the big desk. Nipsey can show Master Harry. Back in the study, Nipsey pressed a hidden catch on the ornate mahogany desk, and a drawer slid open that hadn't been visible before. Inside were several leather-bound notebooks with Lily Evans Potter embossed on their covers. Can I take these with me? Harry asked, picking one up reverently. Of course, Mr. Potter. They're your property, Griphook confirmed. As they continued the tour, Aunt Petunia gradually overcame her initial shock and began to examine the house with a critical eye. In the kitchen, which was equipped with both magical and Muggle appliances, she actually engaged Nipsey in a detailed conversation about how certain magical cooking implements worked. The self-stirring cauldron seems efficient, she admitted grudgingly. And I suppose the ever-fresh charm on the pantry would save on groceries. Nipsey beamed at what he clearly took as high praise. Would Mistress Petunia like tea? Nipsey can prepare a proper English tea with scones and clotted cream. To Harry's amazement, Aunt Petunia accepted. Soon they were seated in the sunlit conservatory, enjoying fresh scones that melted in the mouth and tea served in delicate china bearing the Potter crest. This property has been continuously rented since your parents' deaths, Griphook explained, consulting a ledger he'd pulled from his briefcase. Most recently to a Professor Horace Slughorn, who vacated 3 days ago when our investigation began. Who authorized the rentals? Harry asked, though he already knew the answer. Albus Dumbledore, acting as your magical guardian. The rental income should have been deposited into your trust vault, minus reasonable maintenance expenses. Instead, it was diverted to an account accessible only to Dumbledore. And what was he doing with the money? Petunia asked sharply. Griphook's expression turned grim. We're still tracing the fund flows, but preliminary investigation suggests much of it went to an organization called the Order of the Phoenix. Mrs. Weasley mentioned that, Harry remembered. She said it was Dumbledore's group that fought against Voldemort. Petunia flinched at the name, surprising Harry. You know about him? Lily told me some, she admitted. In her letters. She was frightened near the end. Said they were in hiding because of a prophecy. Her expression changed, becoming distant. I kept those letters, you know. Even after everything. I couldn't bring myself to destroy them. I'd like to read them, Harry said quietly. If that's all right. Petunia nodded stiffly. When we get back. They're in the attic. The tour concluded with a visit to the master bedroom, where Harry found more personal touches, magical photographs of his parents waving and smiling, his father's Quidditch equipment in a corner, and a jewelry box containing his mother's accessories. These are all yours now, Mr. Potter, Griphook reminded him gently when he hesitated to touch anything. You may take what you wish or leave items here under Nipsey's care until you're ready to claim the property permanently. Harry selected a few photographs and, after a moment's thought, a simple gold chain with a small lily pendant that he thought his mother must have worn. For you, he said, offering it to Aunt Petunia. I think she'd want you to have it. Petunia's eyes widened, and for a moment, Harry thought she might refuse. Then, with trembling fingers, she took the necklace. Thank you, she whispered, closing her fingers around it tightly. Their next stop was Diagon Alley, where Harry was to visit his trust vault for spending money and meet with Ragnarok for an update on the Dumbledore situation. The alley was busier than on their previous visit, being a Saturday. Harry noticed people doing double takes as he passed, whispering behind their hands. The boy who lived, he heard more than once. Inside Gringotts, they were escorted directly to Ragnarok's office, where the senior goblin was waiting with a stack of documents. Ah, Mr. Potter, Mrs. Dursley. I trust your tour of the Hampstead property was informative. Very, Harry confirmed. Griphook said you have news about Dumbledore. Ragnarok's expression turned serious. Indeed. As expected, the inheritance ritual triggered notifications to both the Ministry and to Dumbledore himself. He arrived at Gringotts within the hour, demanding an explanation. And what did you tell him? Petunia asked sharply. Only what was legally required, that Mr. Potter had claimed his inheritance and that irregularities had been discovered in the management of the Potter estate. He was displeased. I'll bet he was, Harry muttered. He requested an immediate meeting with you, which I declined on your behalf, citing your need to process your newfound status. However, he was most insistent and has sent several messages. Ragnarok produced a small stack of sealed envelopes. I took the liberty of scanning these for malicious magic before bringing them to your attention. They are clean. Harry accepted the envelopes cautiously. The address on each was written in looping purple ink, Mr. Harry Potter currently at Gringotts Wizarding Bank Diagon Alley, London. Thank you, Harry said, tucking the letters into his pocket without opening them. Has he tried anything else? He filed an emergency petition with the Wizengamot, the Wizarding High Court, seeking to reaffirm his guardianship. The petition was denied pending a full hearing, scheduled for next month. In the meantime, he has been ordered to prepare a complete accounting of all Potter assets under his management. So we have a month before he can try to legally take control again. Correct. Though I suspect he may attempt more informal approaches before then. As if on cue, the office door burst open, and a tall, thin man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles swept in, wearing magnificent purple robes spangled with silver stars. Harry, my boy, he exclaimed, blue eyes twinkling behind his glasses. What a pleasure to finally meet you properly. Ragnarok rose from his seat, looking outraged. Headmaster Dumbledore. This is a private meeting, and you have not been invited. Dumbledore waved a hand dismissively. A simple misunderstanding, I'm sure. I received word that young Harry was here and naturally wished to welcome him to the wizarding world. His eyes fell on Petunia, and his expression cooled slightly. Ah, Petunia. It has been some time. Not long enough, she replied icily. Harry studied the man who had apparently been controlling his life from the shadows. Dumbledore looked exactly like the traditional wizard from storybooks, old and wise, with a benevolent expression that didn't quite reach his calculating eyes. You must be very confused by all this, Harry, Dumbledore continued, turning his attention back to the boy. So much to take in at once. Perhaps we could speak privately. I can answer any questions you might have about your parents, about Hogwarts, about your place in our world. Any questions except why you've been stealing from me? Harry asked bluntly. The twinkle in Dumbledore's eyes dimmed. Ah. I see the goblins have been filling your head with misconceptions. I assure you, every Canute of the Potter estate has been managed with your best interests at heart. By keeping him ignorant and living in a cupboard? Petunia snapped, surprising Harry with her defense. Dumbledore sighed heavily. The blood protection, Petunia. As I explained in my letter, Harry's safety depended on him residing with family. The financial arrangements were merely a practical necessity to fund the ongoing war effort against Voldemort's remaining supporters. The war ended 7 years ago, Harry pointed out. Evil never truly ends, my boy. It merely retreats and regroups. Voldemort's followers still pose a threat, and the Order requires resources to maintain vigilance. Resources that legally belong to Mr. Potter, Ragnarok interjected. Resources you had no authority to divert. Dumbledore's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. I am Harry's magical guardian. The Wisengamot granted me that authority. Guardianship does not confer ownership, Ragnarok countered. And even guardians must act in their ward's best interests and provide accountings of their stewardship. I have always acted in Harry's best interests, Dumbledore insisted. Sometimes the greater good requires difficult choices. The greater good, Harry repeated slowly. That's why I lived in a cupboard. For the greater good? Dumbledore had the grace to look uncomfortable. I had no idea your living conditions were so austere. My monitoring charms showed only that you were alive and healthy. Monitoring charms? Petunia hissed. You've been spying on our home. Simple protective measures, Dumbledore assured her. To ensure Harry's safety. Safe but miserable, Harry said quietly. That was your plan for me? To keep me downtrodden and ignorant until I turned 11? Not ignorant, Harry. Protected. Childhood is precious, and I wished you to enjoy what normalcy you could before assuming the burdens of your fame and destiny. What destiny? Dumbledore's expression grew grave. That, my boy, is a discussion for when you're older. The prophecy, Harry said, watching Dumbledore's eyes widen in surprise. The one that made Voldemort try to kill me. I know about it already. Impossible, Dumbledore whispered. The prophecy's contents are secure. Lily told me some of it, Petunia said. In her letters. And I told Harry. Dumbledore seemed to age before their eyes, the grandfatherly facade cracking to reveal genuine concern. That was unwise, Petunia. Very unwise indeed. Knowledge of the prophecy puts Harry in grave danger. Why? Harry demanded. How does knowing about my own life put me in danger? Because knowledge leads to action, and premature action leads to disaster, Dumbledore replied cryptically. There are forces at work beyond your understanding, Harry. Forces that require careful management and precise timing. Forces you were managing with my money, Harry said flatly. Dumbledore sighed again. I see there is little point in continuing this discussion today. You are understandably upset and suspicious. Perhaps when emotions have cooled, we can speak again. He reached into his robes and produced a small silver device. A portkey to return you safely to Privet Drive when you're ready. We have our own transportation arranged, thank you, Petunia said coldly. As you wish. Dumbledore turned to leave, then paused. One final thought, Harry. Trust is a fragile thing, easily broken and difficult to repair. Consider carefully who deserves yours. With that, he swept from the office. A heavy silence fell after his departure. Well, Ragnarok said finally, that was illuminating. Is he always so manipulative? Ragnarok supplied. In my experience, yes. Albus Dumbledore is a master of the half-truth and the redirection. Never doubt his intelligence or his power, Mr. Potter. Whatever his motives, he is a formidable wizard. But why is he so interested in me specifically? Just because of this prophecy? Ragnock and Griphook exchanged looks. The Potter bloodline is ancient and respected, Griphook said carefully. And you are, of course, famous for surviving the killing curse. But Dumbledore's particular interest? That would require speculation beyond our professional scope. Harry had the distinct impression the goblins knew more than they were saying. What's our next step? He asked. We continue as planned, Ragnock replied. Tomorrow, if it's convenient, you can visit the cottage in Godric's Hollow where your parents lived their final days. It's currently maintained as a memorial site, with an admission fee charged to visitors. People pay to see where my parents died? Harry asked, horrified. Unfortunately, yes. The funds, like your rental income, have been diverted to Dumbledore's control. I want that stopped immediately, Harry said firmly. It's ghoulish. As you wish. We'll post notices that the property is closed for renovations while we sort out the legal issues. After completing their Gringotts business, including withdrawing spending money for Harry's new wardrobe, they headed to Madame Malkin's for wizarding robes and then to a high-end Muggle clothing store in London. You'll need both, Griphook advised. Wizarding attire for visits to magical properties and meetings at Gringotts, and proper Muggle clothing for your daily life. The shopping experience was surreal. Harry, who had never owned anything new, suddenly found himself with multiple outfits, shoes that actually fit, and even a formal set of robes for official wizarding functions. Aunt Petunia, to his surprise, took an active interest in the selections, vetoing anything too outlandish and insisting on practical, durable options. The boy needs proper clothes, not fashion statements, she told the saleswoman firmly. Good quality, mind you, but sensible. By the time they returned to Privet Drive, laden with packages, it was early evening. Uncle Vernon and Dudley were watching television, but both looked up in shock at Harry's transformed appearance. Gone were the ragged hand-me-downs, replaced by properly fitting jeans, a new shirt, and trainers that didn't need to be stuffed with paper to stay on. Good God, Vernon muttered. You look almost normal. Shopping was successful, then, he asked Petunia. Adequate, she replied. The boy has a proper wardrobe now. Nothing extravagant. Harry bit back a smile at her downplaying of what had actually been quite an extensive shopping spree. Aunt Petunia had even unbent enough to suggest a stop for ice cream between stores. We're visiting another property tomorrow, Harry told his uncle. The cottage where my parents, where they died. Vernon shifted uncomfortably. More magic business, eh? Well, keep it discreet. Don't want the neighbors talking. Yes, Uncle Vernon. As Harry headed upstairs to put away his new possessions, Aunt Petunia followed. I'll get those letters, she said. From Lily. And, there's a box of photographs too. Wedding pictures. Holiday snaps. That sort of thing. Harry's heart leapt. You kept photos of my mum? Of course I kept them, she snapped, but without real heat. She was my sister. While Aunt Petunia rummaged in the attic, Harry organized his new clothes, marveling at the simple pleasure of having things that fit properly. He was hanging up his wizarding robes when she returned, carrying a dusty shoebox and a bundle of envelopes tied with faded ribbon. Here, she said, thrusting them at him. I should have given you these years ago, I suppose. Thank you, Harry said sincerely. This means a lot to me. Petunia nodded stiffly and turned to leave, then hesitated. Your eyes, she said. They're exactly like hers. Sometimes it's difficult to look at you. Before Harry could respond, she was gone, closing the door firmly behind her. Harry spent hours that night poring over his mother's letters and photographs. The letters, spanning from Lily's first year at Hogwarts to just weeks before her death, told the story of a bright, passionate girl who loved magic but missed her sister. The early letters were full of excitement about spells and potions and the wonders of Hogwarts. Later ones grew more serious, talking about politics in the wizarding world and the growing threat of Voldemort. The final letters were the most difficult to read. Written from hiding, they spoke of fear and determination and, most intriguing to Harry, cryptic references to research Lily was conducting. "The protective charm is coming along," she wrote in the very last letter. "James thinks I'm mad to keep working on it, but if the worst happens, it might be Harry's only chance. The ancient magic I've found, it's not dark, Petunia, but it's powerful. Blood magic. Family magic. It would require sacrifice, but for him, I would give anything. The prophecy has marked him, but perhaps Mother's love can shield him even from fate." Harry read those words over and over, tears blurring his vision. His mother had known she might die. Had been preparing for it. Had found some magic that might protect him. And it had worked. Somehow, her love had saved him. The photographs were equally precious. Seeing his parents move and laugh in the wizarding photos, seeing his mother's green eyes, so like his own, sparkling with life, was both wonderful and heartbreaking. There were pictures of their wedding, of holidays at the beach, of Christmas celebrations. And there were photos of Harry as a baby, cradled in his mother's arms or zooming around on a tiny broomstick while his father laughed in the background. Harry had no memory of these moments, but the evidence of their love for him was plain in every image. He fell asleep surrounded by these treasures, his mother's final letter clutched in his hand. Morning came with the smell of bacon and the unusual sound of Aunt Petunia calling him down to breakfast rather than banging on his door. Harry carefully stored the letters and photos in his desk drawer before heading downstairs. Breakfast was another surreal experience. Uncle Vernon actually acknowledged him with a grunt that might have been, "Good morning." Dudley, still sullen about the bedroom situation, at least refrained from trying to steal food off Harry's plate. And Aunt Petunia, most surprisingly of all, asked if he had found the letters informative. "Very," Harry replied. "Mum was working on some kind of protective charm before she died. She mentioned blood magic and a sacrifice." Petunia paled. "That would explain." "Explain what?" "When they found you," she said quietly, "after it happened. Dumbledore's letter said you were protected by your mother's sacrifice. That her love created a shield that rebounded the killing curse." Harry thought about the scar on his forehead. "So she died to save me. On purpose. She found a way to turn her death into protection." "Lily was always clever," Petunia said, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "Brightest witch of her age," her professors called her. Uncle Vernon cleared his throat loudly, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Yes, well. About today's outing. What time is that goblin fellow collecting you?" 9:30, Harry replied. "We're going to Godric's Hollow." "That's the village where—" Yes, where it happened," Vernon interrupted. "Well, be careful and don't draw attention. Magic or no magic, there are dangers for a boy your age." It was the closest thing to concern Vernon had ever expressed for Harry's welfare, and he was momentarily stunned into silence. "Thank you, Uncle Vernon. I'll be careful." The second property visit was far more emotionally charged than the first. Godric's Hollow turned out to be a picturesque village with a mix of Muggle and magical residents. Griphook explained that the community had existed since medieval times, named for Godric Gryffindor, one of the founders of Hogwarts. "Many prominent wizarding families have lived here over the centuries," he said as they walked through the village square. "The Potters, the Dumbledores, the Bagshots. Your family's roots in this village go back nearly 400 years. The cottage where Harry's parents had died stood at the end of a winding lane. From the outside, it appeared badly damaged, with the right side of the upper floor blown apart, exposed to the elements. It's been preserved exactly as it was found on the night of October 31, 1981, Griphook explained. A stasis charm prevents further deterioration. A sign had risen out of the ground in front of the cottage, bearing the words, "On this spot, on the night of October 31st, 1981, Lily and James Potter lost their lives. Their son, Harry, remains the only wizard ever to have survived the killing curse. This house, invisible to Muggles, has been left in its ruined state as a monument to the Potters and as a reminder of the violence that tore apart their family." Surrounding the sign were messages from visitors, names and initials scratched into the wood, messages of support and gratitude to the boy who lived. Harry stared at the cottage, a lump forming in his throat. This was where it happened. Where his life changed forever. Where Voldemort had murdered his parents and tried to kill him. Beside him, Aunt Petunia stood rigid, her face a mask of controlled emotion. "I never saw it," she said softly. "After. They just brought you to our doorstep with a letter." Griphook produced a key. "The protective enchantments will recognize you as the owner, Mr. Potter. You may enter if you wish." Harry hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I need to see it." Inside, the cottage was frozen in time. In the front hall, a man's jacket hung on a hook. James Potter's wand lay on a side table, as if hastily set down. The sitting room showed signs of a normal evening interrupted, 2 teacups on the coffee table, a book left open, a baby toy on the rug. "Your father died here," Griphook said quietly. "In the hallway. He was found without his wand, trying to hold Voldemort off to give your mother time to escape with you." Harry moved as if in a trance up the damaged staircase. The left side of the upper floor remained intact, containing a bathroom and what had clearly been his parents' bedroom. But the right side, where the nursery had been, was largely destroyed. "The curse rebounded here," Griphook explained. "The magical backlash caused the explosion." In what remained of the nursery, Harry could make out the remnants of a crib, a rocking chair, and shelves that had once held toys and books. On the floor, barely visible beneath a layer of dust, was a dark stain. "Blood," Griphook confirmed, following Harry's gaze. "Your mother's. She stood between you and Voldemort, refusing to step aside." Harry knelt and touched the stain gently. "She could have lived. Voldemort offered to spare her. According to the official investigation, yes. For reasons unknown, he gave her the option to stand aside. She refused." "Not unknown," Harry whispered. "She'd found the protection spell. She knew her sacrifice would save me." As he spoke, something caught his eye, a faint glimmer beneath the remains of the crib. Reaching under, his fingers closed around a small, cool object. It was a pendant, a tiny crystal vial containing what looked like a drop of silvery liquid, hanging from a fine silver chain. Engraved on the vial were the initials LEP. "What's this?" he asked, showing it to Griphook. The goblin examined it carefully. "I'm not certain. It appears to be a memory vial, used to store extracted memories for later viewing in a pensieve. The contents are still intact, remarkably. My mother's memories. Can I see them?" "With access to a pensieve, yes. They're rare artifacts, but Gringotts has several available for client use. We could arrange a viewing next week, if you wish." Harry clutched the vial tightly. "Yes. Please." They explored the rest of the cottage, finding more personal belongings that had been left undisturbed for 7 years, photo albums, journals, letters. In James Potter's study, hidden behind a secret panel that responded to Harry's touch, they discovered a portfolio of documents. "The Potter family grimoire," Griphook said with surprise, examining the ancient leather-bound book at the center of the collection. "And research notes. Your mother's, by the look of them." Harry opened the grimoire carefully. Inside were handwritten spells, potions recipes, and magical theory dating back centuries, each entry signed and dated by a different Potter ancestor. "The accumulated magical knowledge of your family," Griphook explained. "Extremely valuable and typically protected by blood magic, so only true Potter descendants can read it." Sure enough, as Harry watched, the writing shifted and clarified, becoming perfectly readable to him. When he asked Aunt Petunia to look at a page, she reported seeing only meaningless symbols. The research notes were even more intriguing, Lily Potter's elegant handwriting filling dozens of pages with complex magical formulas, ancient runes, and references to obscure texts. One section, heavily annotated and underlined, was titled simply, Blood Protection. She really was working on it, Harry murmured. The spell that saved me. And succeeded, apparently, Griphook noted. Perhaps these notes explain the mechanics of the protection that remains active to this day. Protection? Aunt Petunia questioned sharply. What protection? The blood ward surrounding your home in Privet Drive, Griphook explained. Surely Dumbledore informed you. By taking Harry into your home, your blood home, you extended Lily Potter's sacrifice protection. While he resides where his mother's blood dwells, Voldemort cannot touch him. Dumbledore said something about protection in his letter, Petunia admitted. But I didn't understand the details. Few would, Griphook said. Blood magic is ancient and complex. But these notes may provide insight that even Dumbledore lacks. They gathered all the relevant documents, journals, and personal effects. Griphook produced a special case with preservation charms for the more fragile items. By the time they left the cottage, Harry felt emotionally drained but strangely at peace. He had connected with his parents in a way he never thought possible, standing where they stood, touching what they touched. Outside the cottage, a surprise awaited them. A small crowd had gathered, whispering excitedly and pointing at the property. It's him, someone exclaimed. It's Harry Potter. Harry froze as dozens of eyes turned toward him. An elderly woman in magenta robes stepped forward. Bathilda Bagshot, Mr. Potter, she introduced herself. I was a friend of your parents. And your mother corresponded frequently with me about her historical research. Historical research? Harry asked, momentarily forgetting his discomfort at being recognized. Oh yes, dear. Lily was particularly interested in ancient protective magic. She spent hours in my library, studying old texts. Brilliant witch, your mother. Such a tragedy. More villagers pressed forward, each wanting to meet the famous boy who lived. Harry shook hands awkwardly, thanked people for their good wishes, and tried to edge toward the waiting car. I knew it was you when I saw the Goblin escort, a middle-aged wizard said. Word spreading that you've claimed your inheritance. About time someone looked into what Dumbledore's been doing with the Potter fortune. Arcturus, his wife hissed. Don't be rude. It's not rude, it's the truth, the man insisted. My shop's right next to one of the Potter properties in Diagon Alley. Been watching Dumbledore's people coming and going for years, never a canute spent on maintenance. Shameful way to treat a hero's legacy. As more people joined the crowd, sharing their own opinions about the Potter properties and Dumbledore's management of them, Harry began to realize just how public his financial dispute with the headmaster was becoming. What had started as a simple audit was turning into a wizarding scandal. Just as the crowd was becoming overwhelming, a loud crack announced the arrival of a tall, severe-looking witch in emerald green robes. That will be quite enough, she announced in a Scottish accent. Mr. Potter is not a public exhibition. Please disperse immediately. To Harry's amazement, the crowd began to break up, though many people lingered at a distance, still watching curiously. Professor McGonagall, Griphook acknowledged with a slight bow. An unexpected pleasure. Mr. Griphook, the witch replied stiffly. When I heard reports of Harry Potter being mobbed in Godric's Hollow, I felt intervention was appropriate. She turned to Harry, her stern expression softening slightly. Mr. Potter. I am Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress of Hogwarts and head of Gryffindor House. I was also a friend of your parents. You knew them well? Harry asked eagerly. I taught them both for 7 years and served alongside them in the Order of the Phoenix. Your father was particularly gifted in Transfiguration, my subject. And your mother was an exceptional student in all areas. Were you aware of her research? On protective magic? McGonagall's eyes widened slightly. I knew she was working on something important during their time in hiding. Albus mentioned it, though he never shared the details. Her gaze shifted to Aunt Petunia. Mrs. Dursley, I presume. We met briefly, many years ago. At Lily's wedding, Petunia confirmed stiffly. You turned a teacup into a tortoise. Indeed. McGonagall's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. May I inquire as to what brings you to Godric's Hollow today? I'm exploring my family properties, Harry explained. Griphook is helping me understand my inheritance. I see. McGonagall's expression grew careful. The headmaster mentioned you had been in contact with Gringotts. He is concerned about your sudden immersion in wizarding affairs before your official introduction at age 11. Is he concerned, or is he worried I've discovered he's been stealing from me? Harry asked bluntly. McGonagall's nostrils flared. That is a serious accusation, Mr. Potter. It's also accurate, Professor, Griphook interjected. The evidence of financial impropriety is substantial and has been submitted to the appropriate authorities. I find that difficult to believe, McGonagall said, but Harry noted a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Albus Dumbledore is one of the most respected wizards in Britain. With respect, Professor, Harry said, respect doesn't make someone infallible. Or honest. McGonagall studied him for a long moment. You have your mother's directness, Mr. Potter. And perhaps your father's willingness to challenge authority. She sighed. I cannot speak to these financial matters. But I can tell you that whatever Albus has done, he believes it to be in service to the greater good. The greater good, Harry repeated. That's what he said yesterday. But whose greater good? Certainly not mine. Perhaps we could continue this discussion somewhere less public. Griphook suggested, nodding toward the lingering onlookers. An excellent suggestion, McGonagall agreed. The Three Broomsticks in Hogsmeade offers private dining rooms. I could escort you there, if you're amenable. Harry looked to Aunt Petunia, who seemed torn between discomfort at more magical exposure and curiosity about what McGonagall might reveal. I suppose, she said reluctantly. If it's not too long. Vernon will be expecting us back for dinner. Hogsmeade turned out to be Britain's only all-wizarding village, a charming collection of thatched cottages and shops nestled at the foot of a mountain. In the distance, Harry could see a magnificent castle perched on a cliff. Hogwarts, McGonagall said, following his gaze. Your future school, Mr. Potter. The Three Broomsticks was a warm, bustling pub filled with an eclectic mix of witches and wizards. The proprietor, a curvy woman with a pretty face, greeted McGonagall by name and showed them to a private room upstairs. Rosmerta, a round of butterbeers, if you please, McGonagall requested. And perhaps tea for Mrs. Dursley. Once they were settled with drinks, Harry finding butterbeer delicious, McGonagall turned the conversation back to Dumbledore. I've known Albus for over 50 years, she began. He is a complex man, brilliant beyond measure, but not without flaws. Chief among them is his tendency to believe that he alone knows the best path forward. For the greater good, Harry said. Precisely. It's a phrase with a complicated history for Albus. In his youth, he was friends with Gellert Grindelwald. The dark wizard he later defeated. Harry asked, recalling the name from Modern Magical History. The very same. Before Grindelwald's darker ambitions became clear, he and Albus shared a philosophy centered around wizard dominance over muggles, for their own good, of course. For the greater good was their motto. Aunt Petunia made a choked sound. This is the man who's been controlling my nephew's life. A wizard supremacist? Former wizard supremacist, McGonagall corrected. Albus saw the error of that thinking long ago, after personal tragedy. But the tendency to believe he knows best, to work toward grand designs without consulting those affected, that remains. And I'm part of his grand design, Harry stated. Because of the prophecy. McGonagall's face paled. You know about the prophecy? Parts of it. I know it's why Voldemort targeted me, and why my parents went into hiding. The professor set her butterbeer down with a thump. This is most irregular. The prophecy's contents are highly restricted. Why? It's about me. Shouldn't I know it? McGonagall hesitated. It's not that simple, Mr. Potter. Prophecies are dangerous things. Knowledge of them can lead to self-fulfilling outcomes. Or to preparation, Harry countered. How can I protect myself if I don't know what I'm up against? You're 8 years old, McGonagall said gently. Your protection should be the responsibility of adults. Adults like Dumbledore, who left me with a family that kept me in a cupboard and told me my parents died in a car crash. Harry's voice rose. Adults who've lied to me my whole life. McGonagall flinched, then turned a shocked gaze to Petunia. A cupboard? The situation has been addressed, Petunia said stiffly. Recent revelations have changed our understanding. I should hope so, McGonagall said coldly. Lily and James would be appalled. Don't speak to me of Lily's wishes, Petunia snapped. She was my sister. For all your magic and your order, you couldn't protect her. And then you dumped her son on my doorstep with nothing but a letter. That was Albus's decision, McGonagall said quietly. I objected at the time. But you didn't stop it, Petunia pointed out. No. I did not. McGonagall turned back to Harry. For that, Mr. Potter, I apologize. Perhaps if I had been more insistent, your early years would have been different. The simple admission and apology caught Harry off guard. Here, finally, was an adult taking responsibility rather than making excuses. Thank you, Professor, he said. But I'm more interested in moving forward. I need to understand what Dumbledore's been doing and why. And I need to know the prophecy. McGonagall considered him for a long moment. I don't know the full prophecy myself. Only Albus does, and the seer who made it. But I will tell you what I do know. She leaned forward, lowering her voice despite the privacy of their room. It foretells that you have power the Dark Lord knows not, and that neither can live while the other survives. Neither can live while the other survives, Harry repeated slowly. What does that mean? I believe it suggests that eventually, you must face Voldemort again. That one of you must defeat the other for either to truly live. Harry felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. But Voldemort's dead. I defeated him as a baby. McGonagall and Griphook exchanged looks. Albus does not believe he is truly gone, McGonagall said carefully. Diminished, yes. Bodiless, perhaps. But not destroyed beyond recovery. He could come back. Harry whispered, horrified. It is Albus's belief that he will try. That is why. She hesitated. Why Dumbledore has been using my money to fund the Order, Harry finished. To prepare for Voldemort's return. I cannot speak to the financial aspect, McGonagall said. But yes, the Order has remained vigilant. There have been signs. Disturbing movements among former Death Eaters. Whispers of dark rituals researched. So Dumbledore expects me to face Voldemort again someday. That's why he's been controlling my life, keeping me with the Dursleys because of the blood protection, keeping me ignorant so I'd be easier to guide when the time came. That is, not an unreasonable assessment, McGonagall admitted. Though I believe his motivations are more complex and not entirely self-serving. Albus does care for you, Harry. He has an odd way of showing it, Petunia muttered. Perhaps, McGonagall conceded. Albus has always played a long game, seeing moves far ahead that others miss. But that doesn't make his methods right, particularly when they affect a child's well-being. What would you suggest I do, Professor? Harry asked. About Dumbledore, about the prophecy, about all of it. McGonagall seemed surprised by the question. You're asking my advice. You knew my parents. You're being honest with me. And you don't seem to think Dumbledore is infallible. No one is infallible, Mr. Potter, McGonagall said firmly. Not even Albus Dumbledore. She thought for a moment. My advice would be to continue your education, about the wizarding world, about your family heritage, about magic itself. Knowledge is power. But proceed with caution. Not everyone who approaches the boy who lived has your best interests at heart. I've learned that already, Harry said drily. Indeed. As for Dumbledore, I would neither trust him blindly nor reject him entirely. He has made mistakes, serious ones, it seems, but he also possesses wisdom and resources that may prove essential in the challenges that lie ahead. A measured approach, Griphook commented. One that aligns with Gringotts' assessment as well. Will you tell him about our meeting? Harry asked McGonagall. I will not lie if asked directly, she replied. But neither will I volunteer information unnecessarily. Your confidence is respected, Mr. Potter. After their meeting with McGonagall, Harry and Petunia returned to Privet Drive, both deep in thought. The revelations about the prophecy and Voldemort's possible return cast a shadow over what had otherwise been an illuminating day. Vernon greeted them with unusual attentiveness, ushering them into the living room and demanding details about the property. When Harry mentioned the crowd that had recognized him, Vernon's face purpled. Famous, are you? People mobbing you in the street? I didn't ask for it, Harry said quickly. It was uncomfortable, actually. Vernon seemed mollified. Well, keep it away from here. Don't need the neighbors getting wind of any of this nonsense. The following week established a new routine. Harry attended school during the day, then spent evenings poring over his mother's research notes and the Potter family grimoire. Weekends were dedicated to visiting more of his properties, each revealing new facets of his family's history and wealth. The London townhouse in Kensington turned out to have been his grandparents' primary residence, filled with photographs of his father as a child and records of the Potter family business, a successful potions ingredient supply company that had been sold after their deaths. The hunting lodge in the Scottish Highlands was more modest but breathtakingly situated on a loch, with grounds that included magical creature habitats for harvesting rare potions components. The caretaker, a grizzled old wizard named Fergus McAllister, nearly wept when Harry introduced himself. The young master returns, he exclaimed, pumping Harry's hand. I knew you'd come back someday. The old place has missed you, lad. Used to bring you here as a wee babe, your father did. Said you'd learn to fish and hunt when you were bigger. The Diagon Alley shops were currently rented to a wandmaker's apprentice and a magical creature trader, both of whom were stunned to discover their young landlord was Harry Potter himself. The wandmaker, a serious young man named Olson, gave Harry an impromptu lesson in wand lore. You'll be coming for your own wand in a few years, he said. Ollivander's, of course, he's the best. But if you're interested in the family business, I'd be happy to show you the basics. Your grandfather provided some of the finest wand woods in Britain from your Highland estate. Most intriguing was the discovery of his mother's research laboratory, hidden beneath one of the Potter properties in Cornwall. The seaside cottage appeared unremarkable from outside, but behind a bookcase in the study, a staircase led to a state-of-the-art potions facility. This is where she did her most important work, Griphook explained as they examined the pristine lab. According to the property records, she spent significant time here in the months before your birth. The lab contained dozens of journals filled with Lily Potter's notes, diagrams, and experimental results. Most focused on protective charms incorporating blood magic, building toward the sacrifice protection that had ultimately saved Harry's life. But there were other research avenues as well, healing potions, countercurses for dark magic, and most intriguingly, studies on magical bonds and their manipulation. Your mother was pioneering cross-disciplinary magical research, Griphook noted, examining the journals with growing respect. Combining potions, charms, ancient runes, and arithmancy in ways rarely attempted. The wizarding community has lost a brilliant innovator. In one sealed cabinet, labeled simply, Prophecy Countermeasures, they found a collection of vials containing experimental potions and a final journal with the most detailed notes yet. Harry read his mother's words with growing amazement. The prophecy binds him, but perhaps not irrevocably. If magic can create such bonds, magic can modify them. Not breaking the prophecy, that would require power beyond imagining, but perhaps redirecting it, creating alternative paths to fulfillment that don't require the sacrifice of a child. She was trying to find a way around the prophecy, Harry realized. A way to protect me from having to face Voldemort. A mother's love, Petunia murmured, surprising both Harry and Griphook with the rare show of sentimentality. The pensive viewing of Lily's memory vial proved to be the most emotional experience yet. In Gringotts' secure viewing room, Harry watched as his mother, vibrant, beautiful, alive, spoke directly to him from the past. "Harry, my darling boy," her voice echoed in the pensive. "If you're seeing this, then our worst fears have come to pass, and your father and I are gone. But you survived, the protection worked." She explained, in detail, the magic she had created, an ancient form of sacrificial protection, enhanced with runic bindings and stabilized through a potion of her own invention. "The blood protection will hold as long as you reside with family, with Petunia. I know she and I have had our differences, but blood is blood, and the magic recognizes that bond. Stay with her until you come of age, and Voldemort cannot touch you." But the most shocking revelation came at the end of the memory. "There's something else you need to know, something even Albus doesn't fully understand. The prophecy speaks of a power the Dark Lord knows not. He believes it to be love, and he's partly right. But it's more specific than that. When I activated the protection, I created a magical link between you and Voldemort, a connection through the very killing curse he used." Lily's expression grew intense, her green eyes, so like Harry's, burning with determination. "That connection is both danger and opportunity, Harry. He can influence you through it if you're not prepared, but you can also use it against him. The research is in my Cornwall lab, the Cabinet of Countermeasures. Study it, understand it. Dumbledore will try to shield you from this knowledge, thinking you too young, but I believe in preparing you. Knowledge is power, my son. Never forget that." The memory ended with Lily reaching out, as if to touch Harry's face. "I love you, my brave boy. Whatever happens, know that your father and I are proud of you, always." Harry emerged from the pensive with tears streaming down his face. Even Griphook looked affected, his usual impassive expression softened. "Your mother was an extraordinary witch," the Goblin said quietly. "And she has given you weapons Dumbledore never intended you to have." Armed with this new knowledge, Harry intensified his studies. With Griphook's help, he arranged for tutors in basic magical theory, wizarding culture, and even rudimentary occlumency, the mental discipline Lily's notes had stressed would be essential for controlling the connection to Voldemort. The Dursleys, remarkably, did not object to these lessons. The regular deposits into their account from the guardianship fund certainly helped, but Harry also noticed a gradual shift in their attitude toward magic itself. Petunia, especially, seemed to be reconciling with the world her sister had inhabited. "It's not all waving wands and riding broomsticks, is it?" she observed one evening, after reviewing some of Lily's research with Harry. "There's actual scholarship involved. Theory and experimentation. Almost scientific." "Exactly," Harry agreed eagerly. Mum was basically a magical scientist. Her notes follow experimental protocols just like in chemistry." Petunia nodded thoughtfully. "She always did excel in sciences at school. Before Hogwarts, I mean." These small moments of connection were precious to Harry, glimpses of the relationship that might have been possible between his mother and aunt if jealousy and prejudice hadn't driven them apart. Even Vernon showed occasional interest, particularly in the business aspects of Harry's inheritance. "This potions company your grandparents ran," he said one Sunday after dinner. "Sounds like it was quite the operation." multiple international suppliers, specialized distribution networks, quality control processes. Proper business sense there. Yes, Uncle Vernon. Griphook says they were very successful. Might be worth looking into reviving it someday. Good business never goes out of style. Dudley remained the most resistant to the changes in the household, continuing to complain about Harry's improved status and new possessions. But even he showed signs of adjustment, especially after Harry, in a calculated move, gifted him with a deluxe gaming console, as thanks for the bedroom. Still don't see why you get new clothes and I don't, Dudley grumbled, but he accepted the peace offering. As Harry's 9th birthday approached in July, Griphook informed him that the Wisengamot hearing regarding Dumbledore's guardianship was scheduled for the same day. It is customary for magical children to attend such hearings, the Goblin explained. Though given your age, you are not required to speak unless you wish to. I want to attend, Harry said firmly. And I want to speak. Dumbledore needs to answer for what he's done. The day of the hearing arrived with Harry dressed in formal wizarding robes, accompanied by both Dursleys, Dudley having been left with Mrs. Figg, and Griphook. The Ministry of Magic, accessed through a peculiar telephone booth in London, was a vast, opulent complex of offices, courtrooms, and administrative spaces. The Wisengamot chamber itself was intimidating, a circular room with tiered seating where dozens of witches and wizards in plum-colored robes observed the proceedings. Dumbledore, as chief warlock, would normally have presided, but had recused himself due to his involvement in the case. An elderly witch named Griselda Marchbanks took the chief's seat instead, calling the hearing to order with a bang of her gavel. Disciplinary hearing of the 21st of July into offences committed by Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, magical guardian of Harry James Potter, she announced. Interrogators, Griselda Marchbanks, acting chief witch, Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Bartemius Crouch, head of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. Dumbledore sat calmly at the defendant's table, wearing magnificent robes of midnight blue spangled with stars. He nodded politely to Harry as the boy entered with his guardians. The charges against the defendant are as follows, Marchbanks continued. That he knowingly misappropriated funds from the Potter estate for unauthorized purposes. That he failed to provide required financial accountings to Gringotts Wizarding Bank as trustee. That he exceeded his authority as magical guardian by making decisions contrary to the best interests of his ward. How does the defendant plead? Amelia Bones asked, a square-jawed witch with a monocle who looked singularly unimpressed by Dumbledore's twinkling smile. I acknowledge my administrative oversights regarding the accountings, Dumbledore replied serenely. As for the other charges, I believe a full explanation of the circumstances will demonstrate that all my actions were taken with Harry's safety and well-being as my paramount concern. We shall see, Marchbanks said dryly. The court calls Griphook of Gringotts to present the financial evidence. For the next hour, Griphook methodically laid out the case against Dumbledore, the diverted rental income, the admission fees charged at Godric's Hollow, the neglected maintenance of several properties, and most damningly, the direct transfers to Order of the Phoenix accounts. When asked to explain, Dumbledore spoke at length about the ongoing threat posed by Voldemort's former supporters, the need for constant vigilance, and the importance of maintaining a network of informants and safe houses. All of which could have been funded through legitimate channels, Bones pointed out. The Ministry maintains an Aura department for precisely these purposes. The Ministry's resources are limited, and bureaucratic oversight can delay critical operations, Dumbledore countered. The Order required autonomy and discretion to be effective. At the expense of an orphan child's inheritance? Crouch asked skeptically. A temporary reallocation of resources for the greater good, Dumbledore insisted. Had Harry been aware of the circumstances, I'm certain he would have approved. But he wasn't aware, Bones said sharply. Because you kept him ignorant of his heritage, his wealth, and the magical world itself. That brings us to the second aspect of this hearing, your decisions regarding Mr. Potter's upbringing. At this point, Vernon and Petunia were called to testify. To Harry's surprise, they were remarkably restrained, confirming that while they had kept Harry separate from the magical world as instructed by Dumbledore, they had never been informed of his financial status or their right to guardianship compensation. "We were told only that the boy needed to stay with blood relatives for his protection," Petunia stated. No financial support was offered, no explanation of his status in the wizarding world was provided. "We were expected to raise an additional child on our own resources with no guidance or assistance. And yet the boy was not treated as your own child, was he?" Bones pressed. "Our investigation revealed concerning living conditions, a cupboard under the stairs used as a bedroom, inadequate clothing, nutritional neglect." Vernon shifted uncomfortably. "We did the best we could with what we knew," he blustered. "And the situation has been rectified now that we understand the boy's position." "Convenient," Marchbanks observed. Finally, Harry himself was invited to speak. He stood before the Wizengamot, painfully aware of every eye upon him but determined to be heard. "I don't understand everything about the magical world yet," he began. "I've only known about it for a few months. But I do understand when someone takes what isn't theirs. I understand when someone keeps important information secret that could have made my life better." He described his life at the Dursleys before the discovery of his inheritance, the cupboard, the hand-me-downs, the constant belittlement of his parents and their memories. Then he explained how everything changed once the Dursleys realized his financial value. "Professor Dumbledore says everything he did was for my protection. But how does stealing my money protect me? How does keeping me ignorant of magic protect me? How does letting me be mistreated by my relatives protect me?" He looked directly at Dumbledore. "My mother left research explaining the blood protection. She wanted me to know about it, to understand it. She left memories and journals and notes so I wouldn't be in the dark. You kept all that from me. Why?" Dumbledore's expression was pained. "You were a child, Harry. Still are. I wanted to preserve what childhood you could have before burdening you with knowledge of prophecies and dark lords and sacrificial magic." "But it wasn't your decision to make," Harry countered. "My parents left those things for me. They wanted me to know." "Perhaps," Dumbledore conceded. "But your parents could not have foreseen all that would come to pass. Sometimes, the burden of knowledge is greater than the burden of ignorance. That should have been my choice." After all testimony was complete, the Wizengamot deliberated briefly before rendering their decision. "Albus Dumbledore," Marchbanks announced, "this court finds you in violation of your fiduciary duties as magical guardian of Harry James Potter. You are hereby ordered to provide full financial restitution of all misappropriated funds, with interest, to the Potter vaults. You are further removed as magical guardian, with those duties to be assumed by a ministry-appointed advocate until Mr. Potter reaches the age of magical majority." She peered sternly over her spectacles at the headmaster. "While the court acknowledges the extraordinary circumstances surrounding Mr. Potter's case and the genuine security concerns involved, we cannot condone actions that violate both law and ethics, regardless of intent. Your position as Chief Warlock will be suspended for a period of 1 year, during which time you will reflect on the proper boundaries of your various roles." Dumbledore accepted the verdict with a gracious nod, though Harry thought he detected genuine regret in the old man's eyes. After the hearing, as they were preparing to leave the ministry, Dumbledore approached Harry. "May I have a moment, Harry?" The Dursleys bristled protectively, but Harry nodded. "It's all right." When they were relatively private, Dumbledore sighed heavily. "I owe you an apology, Harry. While I still believe many of my decisions were necessary, I see now that I failed to consider the human cost of my strategic thinking." "You treated me like a chess piece," Harry said. "Not a person." "A painfully accurate assessment. The burden of seeing the bigger picture sometimes blinds one to the smaller, but no less important, details." Dumbledore's blue eyes were somber behind his half-moon spectacles. "I hope, in time, you might come to understand, if not forgive." "I need to know the full prophecy," Harry said, not acknowledging the apology. "Not pieces of it." All of it. Dumbledore hesitated, then nodded slowly. Perhaps you do. But not here, not now. When you come to Hogwarts, we will speak of it properly. 2 more years. That's your idea of not keeping me in the dark. Some knowledge requires context, Harry. Preparation. You've discovered much already, perhaps too much, too quickly. Give yourself time to process what you've learned before seeking more. Harry considered this. Despite everything, there was wisdom in the advice. I'll keep studying my mother's research, he said. And learning about the wizarding world. I won't be unprepared when the time comes. No, I don't imagine you will be. A ghost of a smile crossed Dumbledore's face. You have Lily's intellect and James's determination. A formidable combination. He turned to leave, then paused. One final thought, Harry. While I regret the methods, I maintain that the blood protection at your aunt's home is essential to your safety. I hope you will consider maintaining your residence there, despite our disagreements. I know about the protection, Harry said. Mum's notes explained it thoroughly. I'll stay with the Dursleys. He couldn't resist adding, but I'll be visiting my other properties regularly. And having friends over. As is your right, Dumbledore conceded. Until September 1st, 1991, then, Harry. Hogwarts. Indeed. Where I hope we might forge a new understanding, based on mutual respect rather than authority. As Harry watched the elderly wizard walk away, he felt conflicted. Dumbledore had wronged him, had manipulated his life from the shadows, and yet, there was something compelling about the man, a sense of depth and complexity that suggested his motivations were not as simple as mere control or power. What did he want? Petunia asked suspiciously when Harry rejoined them. To apologize. And to make sure I understand the blood protection needs me to stay at Privet Drive. As if we'd turn you out now, Vernon huffed. Proper guardian compensation, school fees covered, health expenses reimbursed, the arrangement is perfectly satisfactory. Harry hid a smile. His uncle's materialistic views were unlikely to ever change completely, but at least their interests were now aligned. In the months that followed the hearing, Harry's life transformed dramatically. With Dumbledore removed as his magical guardian, a ministry which named Andromeda Tonks was appointed to the role. She turned out to be related to Harry through his grandmother's black family connections and took a genuine interest in his education and well-being. You need more than just academic knowledge of the wizarding world, she explained during one of her regular visits to Privet Drive. You need to understand the social dynamics, the political landscape, the cultural nuances. Under her guidance, Harry began attending carefully selected wizarding social functions, tea with the Bones family, whose daughter Susan was his age, flying lessons with the Weasleys, who welcomed him warmly into their chaotic household, even a formal dinner at Longbottom Manor, where he met Neville, a shy boy with a passion for herbology who would be in his year at Hogwarts. These connections proved invaluable, not just for the friendships formed but for the different perspectives they offered on wizarding society. Augusta Longbottom, Neville's formidable grandmother, provided insights into the old pure-blood families. Arthur Weasley, with his fascination for Muggle artifacts, offered a unique view on wizard-Muggle relations. Amelia Bones, with her position in law enforcement, explained the legal and governance structures of magical Britain. Through these associations, Harry began to map the complex web of relationships and influences that would shape his future at Hogwarts and beyond. He learned which families had supported Voldemort, which had opposed him, and which had attempted to remain neutral. He discovered the deep-seated prejudices that still divided the wizarding world: blood status, creature rights, traditional versus progressive values. And everywhere he went, he heard whispers about his confrontation with Dumbledore, about the prophecy, about his growing influence despite his young age. The boy who lived and learned, the Daily Prophet dubbed him in a feature article that appeared on his 9th birthday. Harry Potter steps out of the shadows and into his birthright. The article, written by a reporter named Rita Skeeter, was sensationalized but not entirely inaccurate, sources close to the Potter heir reveal that the young hero has been systematically reclaiming his family's legacy, from properties spread across Britain to ancient magical knowledge preserved in the Potter grimoire. Under the guidance of Gringotts' advisors and his newly appointed magical guardian, Andromeda Tonks, née Black, Potter is receiving an education worthy of his status and destiny. This marks a dramatic shift from the shroud of secrecy Albus Dumbledore attempted to maintain around the boy who lived. While Dumbledore's supporters insist his motives were protective, others question whether the legendary wizard's control over Potter's life was driven by more complex motivations connected to the prophecy that marked the boy as Voldemort's downfall. Harry is extraordinarily mature for his age, confides one family who recently hosted the Potter heir. He asks insightful questions about magical theory that would challenge many adult wizards. And his understanding of his family's research legacy is impressive. Lily Potter would be proud of how her son has embraced her intellectual curiosity. As Potter approaches his Hogwarts years, the wizarding world watches with bated breath. Will the boy hero align with Dumbledore's vision, forge his own path, or perhaps even challenge the established order of magical Britain? One thing is certain, Harry Potter is no longer content to remain in ignorance of his heritage or his destiny. Harry found the article both amusing and unsettling. The accuracy of some details suggested inside sources, while the dramatic speculation about his future, challenging the established order, seemed designed to create controversy. "That's Rita for you," Andromeda explained when he showed her the article. "Half fact, half fiction, all designed to sell papers. But there's an advantage to controlling your own narrative, Harry. Better to engage with the press on your terms than let them define you in your absence." Taking this advice to heart, Harry agreed to a single interview with a more reputable publication, the Wizarding Chronicle, focusing on his charitable intentions rather than political implications. He announced the establishment of the Lily and James Potter Foundation, which would fund research in defensive magic and healing potions, his mother's specialties. The interview was a strategic success, shifting public perception from rebellious heir challenging Dumbledore to thoughtful young philanthropist honoring his parents' legacy. It also had the benefit of being genuinely aligned with Harry's own values and interests. By the time his 10th birthday arrived, Harry had visited all 15 of his properties, established relationships with key wizarding families, and developed a rudimentary understanding of magic through theoretical study. Though he couldn't legally perform spells until he had a wand and began formal education, his knowledge of magical theory, history, and culture far exceeded that of the typical Muggle-raised student entering Hogwarts. Most importantly, he had begun to internalize and expand upon his mother's research. The connection between himself and Voldemort, which Lily had identified in her notes, became the focus of his private studies. With Andromeda's help, he located additional references in the Black family library that complemented Lily's work on magical bonds. "Your mother was pioneering work that intersects with some very ancient magic," Andromeda explained as they examined a particularly obscure text. "Soul magic, blood magic, sacrificial bonds, these are primal forces that predate modern wand-based spellcasting. And that's why she believed the connection could be used against Voldemort," Harry said. "Because it operates on those primal levels that bypass normal magical defenses." Precisely. Modern wizards often dismiss ancient magic as primitive or unreliable, but in many ways, it's more powerful because it taps directly into the fundamental forces of magic itself. This perspective gave Harry hope. If his mother, brilliant, innovative Lily Potter, had believed there was a way to turn Voldemort's attack back on itself through their connection, then perhaps the prophecy didn't necessarily mean a direct confrontation between a schoolboy and the most feared dark wizard of the age. On a warm August evening, as Harry sat in the Dursleys' back garden reading one of his mother's journals, he felt a sudden, sharp pain in his scar, similar to the twinge he'd experienced the day he'd first learned about Dumbledore's deception, but stronger. He pressed his hand to his forehead, closing his eyes against the unexpected pain. And in that moment of darkness, he saw something. A shadowy figure moving through a forest. A slithering sensation. Hunger and anger and frustrated ambition. Then it was gone, leaving Harry gasping and confused. "Harry?" Aunt Petunia's voice called from the back door. "Are you all right?" "Fine," he managed. "Just a headache." But it wasn't just a headache, and he knew it. Something had happened, a brief connection activated. Following his mother's protocol from her notes, he immediately wrote down everything he could remember about the experience, then sent an urgent message to Andromeda. She arrived the next morning, concerned but calm. "Describe it again," she instructed after they'd settled in Harry's room, privacy charms in place to prevent the Dursleys from overhearing. Harry recounted the experience in detail, the pain, the vision, the emotions that hadn't felt like his own. "Your mother's theory appears correct," Andromeda said when he finished. "The killing curse created a connection between you and Voldemort. What you experienced was likely a brief moment of shared consciousness. But Voldemort's supposed to be barely alive, a wraith, you said." "Yes, which makes this concerning. For you to experience such a clear connection suggests he may be growing stronger, perhaps finding temporary physical form. What should I do?" "Continue with the occlumency exercises I've taught you. They're your best defense against unwanted mental intrusions. And will accelerate your study of your mother's counteractive techniques." "Should we tell Dumbledore?" Harry asked reluctantly. Andromeda considered this. "Yes, I believe we should. Whatever our disagreements with the headmaster, he has more experience with Voldemort than anyone alive. This information could be crucial." The message they sent to Dumbledore received a swift response, an invitation to meet at Hogwarts itself, where the headmaster could better explain certain aspects of the connection in person. "Is that safe?" Petunia asked when informed of the plan. Her relationship with the wizarding world had evolved considerably, but she remained deeply suspicious of Dumbledore. "Hogwarts is the safest magical location in Britain," Andromeda assured her. "And I'll be with Harry the entire time." And so, 2 years earlier than expected, Harry Potter found himself approaching the gates of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The castle was even more magnificent than the photographs in Hogwarts, a History, had suggested, towers and turrets soaring against the blue summer sky, the black lake sparkling in the sunshine, the forbidden forest a dark, mysterious boundary. Professor McGonagall met them at the gates, her expression warming slightly at the sight of Harry. "Mr. Potter. Mrs. Tonks. Welcome to Hogwarts." "Thank you, Professor," Harry replied. "It's amazing." "Indeed it is. For over 1,000 years, it has been a sanctuary and a crucible for young witches and wizards. And in 2 years, it will be your home for 7 formative years." She gestured toward the castle. "The headmaster is expecting you in his office. Please follow me." As they walked through the grounds and into the castle itself, Harry tried to absorb every detail, the moving staircases, the talking portraits, the ghosts drifting through walls. This was his heritage, his birthright as a wizard, the world his parents had inhabited. Dumbledore's office turned out to be located behind a stone gargoyle that moved aside when McGonagall gave the password, "Acid Pops." A spiral staircase carried them upward to a circular room filled with whirring silver instruments, portraits of sleeping former headmasters, and bookshelves crammed with ancient tomes. Dumbledore himself sat behind a massive desk, his phoenix familiar perched nearby. He rose as they entered, smiling warmly. "Harry, Andromeda. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Minerva, for escorting our guests." Once they were seated, Dumbledore turned to Harry. "I understand you've experienced a connection with Voldemort. Please, tell me exactly what occurred." Harry described the incident again, watching Dumbledore's expression grow increasingly grave. "This confirms what I have long suspected," the headmaster said when Harry finished. "When Voldemort attempted to kill you, when Lily's protection caused the curse to rebound, a piece of Voldemort's essence attached itself to you." "A piece of his essence?" Harry repeated, horrified. "You mean, there's a part of him in me?" "Not precisely. More accurately, there is a magical connection, a tether of sorts, that links your consciousness to his under certain conditions. My mother's research mentioned this connection, Harry said. She believed it could be used against Voldemort somehow. Dumbledore looked surprised. Did she indeed? Lily was even more insightful than I realized. He steepled his fingers. She was correct. The connection is both vulnerability and opportunity. It allows Voldemort potential access to your mind, but it also gives you a window into his. Can it be severed? Andromeda asked. Perhaps, Dumbledore said cautiously. But doing so would require extreme measures, and might possibly reduce Harry's ability to ultimately defeat Voldemort. Because of the prophecy, Harry stated. Yes. Neither can live while the other survives. Your destinies are intertwined, Harry. This connection may be unpleasant, even dangerous, but it may also prove essential to fulfilling the prophecy. My mother didn't think so, Harry countered. Her research suggested ways to redirect the prophecy's energy, to fulfill it without a direct confrontation. Again, Dumbledore looked surprised. I would very much like to see Lily's research on this matter. If she found an alternative interpretation of the prophecy's requirements, that could change our entire strategic approach. I'll consider sharing it, Harry said, not quite ready to hand over his mother's work to the man who had concealed it from him for years. But first, I need to know the full prophecy. Not pieces or summaries. The exact words. Dumbledore sighed. Very well. You have earned that right. He rose and moved to a cabinet, from which he extracted a shallow stone basin carved with runes, a pensieve. This is a memory, he explained, touching his wand to his temple and drawing out a silvery strand. Of the night I first heard the prophecy, spoken by Sybil Trelawney during her job interview for the divination position. He deposited the memory in the pensieve, then invited Harry and Andromeda to join him in viewing it. The memory showed a younger Dumbledore sitting across from a thin woman with enormous glasses and shawls draped around her shoulders. Mid-conversation, the woman suddenly stiffened, her eyes rolling back, and when she spoke, it was in a harsh, rasping voice unlike her normal tones. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the seventh month dies. They emerged from the memory to find Harry pale but composed, processing the full implications of the prophecy. Mark him as his equal, he quoted. My scar. And, power the Dark Lord knows not, my mother thought that referred to the protection she created, the connection that formed when her spell rebounded his curse. A reasonable interpretation, Dumbledore agreed. Though I have always believed the power also refers to your capacity for love, something Voldemort, who has never known love, cannot understand or counter. Love? Harry asked skeptically. Do not underestimate it, Harry. Your mother's love created the protection that saved you. Love drives the most powerful magic known to wizard kind, sacrificial magic, family magic, bonds of loyalty and friendship. These are forces Voldemort, in his isolation and hatred, can never fully comprehend or harness. Harry considered this. His mother's research had emphasized similar themes, the power of willing sacrifice, of blood freely given, of magical intent driven by pure love rather than dominance or control. The prophecy says either must die at the hand of the other, he noted. That seems pretty clear. Eventually, one of us has to kill the other. Prophecies are rarely as straightforward as they seem, Dumbledore cautioned. The words, at the hand of, need not imply direct physical confrontation. If your mother found a way to use the connection itself as a conduit for the final confrontation, then I could fulfill the prophecy without having to duel Voldemort directly, Harry finished, hope rising. That's what her countermeasures research was working toward. A brilliant approach, Dumbledore acknowledged. One I had not considered. I have been proceeding under the assumption that you would eventually need to face Voldemort directly, and that my role was to prepare you for that moment. By keeping me ignorant and dependent on you. Harry couldn't resist asking. Dumbledore winced. By guiding your development and protecting you until you were ready. But I see now that my methods were flawed. Lily's approach, arming you with knowledge and agency, may well prove more effective. So what happens now? Andromeda asked. Harry has experienced one connection episode. There may be more. Almost certainly there will be, Dumbledore confirmed. Especially as Voldemort grows stronger, which I believe he is attempting to do. There have been disturbing reports from Albania, where I believe his wraith has been hiding, missing persons, dead unicorns, dark magical signatures. Albania? Harry asked, remembering the forest from his vision. Yes. The forests there are ancient and steeped in dark magic, a suitable refuge for a disembodied spirit seeking to regain physical form. So I need to be prepared for more episodes, Harry said. More visions or feelings from him. Yes. Occlumency will help, as I'm sure Andromeda has told you. But I would also like to propose an alternate approach, one that aligns with your mother's research. Instead of merely blocking the connection, perhaps we can use it, carefully, strategically, to gather intelligence about Voldemort's activities and plans. Use it how? Harry asked warily. With proper training, you might learn to access the connection deliberately, under controlled conditions, rather than experiencing random intrusions. This would give you a significant advantage, knowledge of his movements, his followers, his strategies. Wouldn't he sense me looking back at him? Eventually, perhaps. But by then, you would ideally have developed sufficient skill to withdraw safely. Dumbledore leaned forward earnestly. This approach has risks, Harry. I would not suggest it if the stakes were not so high. But combined with your mother's countermeasures research, it might provide a path to fulfilling the prophecy that doesn't require you to become a warrior or a killer. Harry glanced at Andromeda, who looked concerned but thoughtful. It's consistent with Lily's approach, she acknowledged. Using the connection offensively rather than just defending against it. But the mental risks are substantial. I'd want to continue studying Mum's research first, Harry decided. Really understand the foundation before trying to build on it. A wise precaution, Dumbledore agreed. And perhaps, when you're ready, you might consider sharing that research with me. Not to take control, but to collaborate. Despite our past differences, I do have certain resources and experience that might complement Lily's work. Harry nodded slowly. I'll think about it. He paused, then added, there's something else I've been wondering. The night my parents died, why did Voldemort offer to spare my mother? You said he gave her the choice to step aside. Dumbledore's expression grew troubled. That has long puzzled me as well. Voldemort was not known for mercy, particularly toward those who opposed him directly, as your mother had done 3 times previously. Could someone have asked him to spare her? Harry pressed. Someone he would listen to. A flash of something, realization. Concern. Crossed Dumbledore's face. What makes you ask that specific question, Harry? Something in one of the memory vials I found at Godric's Hollow. A conversation between my parents. My father said someone had betrayed them, not just their location, but that the betrayal went deeper. My mother mentioned someone who once cared for her, someone who might have tried to save her but not James or me. Dumbledore sighed heavily. I had hoped this particular complexity might wait until you were older. He seemed to debate with himself before continuing. There was indeed someone who asked Voldemort to spare Lily. A Death Eater who had once cared deeply for your mother. They were childhood friends before Hogwarts, and he never overcame his feelings for her, even after they parted ways. Who? Harry demanded. Severus Snape. Currently Hogwarts potions master. Harry stared at Dumbledore in shock. You employed the man who betrayed my parents. Severus did not betray their location, Dumbledore clarified quickly. That was Peter Pettigrew, who was their secret keeper after a last-minute change from Sirius Black. But Severus did, unwittingly, relay the first half of the prophecy to Voldemort after overhearing it at the Hog's Head Inn. When he realized Lily was in danger as a result, he turned spy for our side, providing valuable intelligence at great personal risk. He tried to save my mother but was willing to let Voldemort murder my father and me. Harry's voice rose incredulously. And you've given this man access to children? Severus has spent the past 9 years attempting to atone for his mistakes, Dumbledore said quietly. His remorse is genuine and profound. I don't care about his remorse. He's partly responsible for my parents' deaths. Many people bear some measure of responsibility for that tragedy, Harry. Myself included. I suggested the Fidelius charm but failed to insist on being their secret keeper. I suspected a traitor in the order but couldn't identify them in time. I heard the prophecy but couldn't protect all the families at risk. Dumbledore's voice was heavy with old grief. We all live with our failures and attempt to make amends as best we can. Harry wanted to stay angry, but the raw honesty in Dumbledore's admission gave him pause. Will I have to take classes with this Snape person when I come to Hogwarts? Potions is a core subject, so yes. But I give you my word that Professor Snape will treat you with professional courtesy. He has sworn an oath to protect you, as part of his atonement. I don't want his protection, Harry muttered. Nevertheless, you have it. And in the coming conflict, you will need every ally available, regardless of your personal feelings toward them. They departed Hogwarts with much to consider, the full prophecy, the nature of the connection to Voldemort, the revelations about Snape, and the possibility of a strategic approach that combined Lily's research with Dumbledore's resources. As they passed through the gates, Harry looked back at the castle that would become his school in just 2 years. I always thought coming to Hogwarts would be an escape, he said to Andromeda. A fresh start, away from the Dursleys. But now you realize you'll be stepping into a much more complex situation, she finished for him. Old loyalties, old grudges, politics and prophecies. Exactly. And Dumbledore will be there, watching, planning. Snape too. Harry frowned. I need to be prepared. You will be, Andromeda assured him. You've already accomplished more in a few months than most wizard children do in years. Your mother's research gives you a unique advantage, and the connections you've been building with other wizarding families will provide support Dumbledore can't control. I hope so, Harry said. Because I get the feeling that no matter what Dumbledore says about collaboration, he still has his own plans for me. His own interpretation of the prophecy. Undoubtedly. But that's the difference now, Harry. You have choices. You have knowledge. You have your own path forward. She smiled at him. Your mother would be very proud of the thoughtful, strategic young man you're becoming. Harry touched the vial of Lily's memories that he wore on a chain around his neck. I hope so. I'm trying to follow her example, using knowledge as power, finding clever solutions instead of just brute force. A very Ravenclaw approach, Andromeda observed. Though with a touch of Slytherin strategy as well. What about Gryffindor? That's where my parents were, right? Indeed. And there's certainly courage in facing these challenges head-on rather than hiding from them. You've elements of all the houses, Harry. That's a strength, not a weakness. As they operated back to Privet Drive, Harry couldn't help but feel that despite the heavy revelations of the day, he was in a far better position than he would have been had Dumbledore's original plan proceeded unchallenged. Instead of arriving at Hogwarts as an ignorant, isolated 11-year-old, overwhelmed by fame and manipulation, he would enter as an informed, connected young wizard with his own support network and research foundation. The prophecy still loomed, the connection to Voldemort remained a concern, but for the first time since learning about his destined conflict with the Dark Lord, Harry felt something like optimism. Not just because of his mother's research or Dumbledore's grudging cooperation, but because he had taken control of his own story. 2 years remained before Hogwarts, 2 years to study, prepare, and build the foundations that would support him through whatever challenges lay ahead. The boy in the cupboard was gone forever, replaced by a young wizard growing into his power and purpose, guided by his mother's brilliant legacy and his own emerging judgment. And somewhere in an Albanian forest, a shadow that had once been the most feared dark wizard in history sensed a shift in the connection linking him to the boy who had caused his downfall. Something had changed. The path to his return might be more complicated than he had anticipated. The game of prophecy and power continued, its pieces rearranging into new patterns of possibility. But for perhaps the first time, Harry Potter was not just a pawn on someone else's board, he was becoming a player in his own right. Chapter 3, Reclaiming the Potter Legacy. You want to hire what? Vernon spluttered, his mustache quivering with indignation. Magical investigators, Harry repeated calmly, sliding the proposal across the kitchen table. To look into the circumstances of my parents' deaths. It was a crisp October morning, nearly 3 months after Harry's visit to Hogwarts. The Dursley kitchen, once a battlefield of tension for Harry, had transformed into neutral territory. Not friendly, exactly, but no longer openly hostile. Is that really necessary? Petunia asked, frowning as she examined the document Andromeda had helped prepare. You already know what happened. He who must not be named killed them. I know the what, not the why or the how, Harry countered. Too many pieces don't fit. Why did Voldemort, Petunia flinched, target my family specifically? How did he find them when they were supposedly under the most powerful protection charm available? Why wasn't Sirius Black, my godfather, given a trial before being thrown in prison? The last question caught Vernon's attention. No trial. Even murderers get trials. Not in the wizarding world, apparently, Harry said. At least, not during wartime. Andromeda helped me access the ministry records. There's no transcript, no evidence presented, nothing. Just an arrest report and a transfer to Azkaban. Barbaric, Vernon muttered, though Harry suspected his uncle's outrage had more to do with the procedural irregularity than concern for Sirius's rights. The investigators will examine everything, interview witnesses, review evidence, check wand signatures. Griphook recommended them, former Aurors who now work private cases. And the cost? Vernon asked, ever practical when it came to finances. Covered by my trust fund, Harry assured him. Ragnarok approved the expenditure as relevant to family legacy reclamation. Vernon grunted his acceptance. Financial matters had become remarkably smoother since the Goblins had established a Muggle bank account linked to Harry's trust vault, with appropriate guardian access for legitimate expenses. Just keep it quiet, Petunia insisted. The neighbors won't know a thing, Harry finished. The investigators are discreet. They'll come and go without anyone noticing. That was how Harry found himself, 2 days later, seated in his bedroom with Alastair, Mad-Eye, Moody and Amelia Bones, hardly the low-profile investigators he'd imagined. Didn't expect the head of magical law enforcement herself, Harry admitted, trying not to stare at Moody's wildly rotating magical eye. This isn't official ministry business, Bones clarified, her monocle glinting in the afternoon sunlight. I'm here as a friend of your parents, and because what happened to Sirius Black represents a significant breach of magical justice protocols that I've recently become aware of. Constant vigilance. Moody barked suddenly, making Harry jump. That's what your case needs, Potter. Too many accepted the official story without asking questions. Dumbledore's story. You don't trust Dumbledore? Harry asked, surprised. I don't trust anyone completely, Moody growled. But I respect Albus. Doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes or keep secrets. Man plays his cards closer than a goblin banker. What we know so far, Bones interjected, all business, is troubling. The Potter cottage at Godric's Hollow was under Fidelius' charm, making it unplottable and undetectable unless the secret keeper deliberately revealed its location. Initially, everyone believed Sirius Black was that secret keeper. But he wasn't, Harry stated, recalling Dumbledore's explanation. Correct. According to Dumbledore's testimony to the Wizengamot, provided only last month after your inquiry triggered a review, there was a last-minute switch to Peter Pettigrew. A switch almost no one knew about. So Pettigrew betrayed my parents to Voldemort? That's the theory, Moody confirmed. Problem is, Pettigrew supposedly died in the confrontation with Black. Street blown apart, dozen muggles killed, nothing left of Pettigrew but a finger. You sound skeptical, Harry observed. Moody's magical eyes spun wildly. Crime scene never made sense to me. One spell, no matter how powerful, doesn't disintegrate a body but leave a perfectly severed finger. That's staged. You think Pettigrew is alive? Harry asked, heart racing. Can't say for certain, Bones replied. But we intend to find out. We're reopening the entire investigation, from the prophecy to your placement with the Dursleys. The first step, Moody declared, is to interview Black directly. Harry's eyes widened. You can do that? With difficulty, Bones acknowledged. Azkaban is not a pleasant place. The Dementors make interrogation challenging. Dementors? Foul creatures, Moody growled. Guard the wizard prison. Suck all happiness from you, leave nothing but your worst memories. Most inmates go mad within months. And Sirius has been there for 9 years. Without a trial. Harry felt sick. Another item on our list of irregularities, Bones confirmed grimly. The investigation moved quickly after that initial meeting. Moody and Bones, operating unofficially but with the implicit authority of the DMLE head, gained access to records and witnesses that might have remained closed to regular private investigators. 2 weeks later, they returned with their first major discovery. We found the spell residue analysis from Godric's Hollow, Bones announced, spreading parchments across Harry's desk. These should have been part of the official record but were sealed by ministerial order. Bagnall's signature, Moody pointed out. Former minister. Always wondered why she was so quick to wrap up the Potter case. The magical analysis showed spell signatures from that fateful night, James Potter's last defensive charms, Lily's complex protective magic, and the unique signature of Voldemort's killing curses. What's this? Harry asked, pointing to a fourth magical trace, fainter but distinct. Moody's scarred face twisted in what might have been a smile. Sharp eyes, Potter. That's the anomaly. Someone else was there that night. Someone whose magical signature doesn't match any Death Eater on record. Another wizard? After my parents died but before Hagrid arrived to get me? Exactly, Bones confirmed. And they performed magic, a complex charm of some kind that intersected with the residual energies of your mother's protection. Dumbledore? Harry guessed. Magical signatures are like fingerprints, Moody explained. This doesn't match Albus. But it does share certain characteristics with a very specific category of magic, unspeakable work. Department of Mysteries, Bones clarified, seeing Harry's confusion. The most secretive division of the Ministry. They study fundamental magical forces, time, space, death, love, thought. And prophecies. The implications hit Harry like a physical blow. Someone from the Department of Mysteries came to our house that night. Because of the prophecy? That's our working theory, Bones confirmed. But why, and what exactly they did, remains unclear. The Sirius Black investigation progressed simultaneously. After a grueling trip to Azkaban, which left both Moody and Bones shaken, they returned with memories for Harry's pensieve, the small one Andromeda had gifted him for his 10th birthday. He's remarkably sane, considering, Bones reported. Most inmates are incoherent after years with the Dementors. Black can still hold a conversation, still remembers details. He agreed to Veritaserum questioning, Moody added. Truth serum. Most conclusive evidence there is. In the pensieve, Harry watched his godfather, gaunt, filthy, but with intelligence still burning in his grey eyes, answer questions under the influence of the truth serum. Were you the Potter's secret keeper? Bones asked. No, Sirius replied in a flat, emotionless tone induced by the potion. I convinced James to switch to Peter. I was too obvious a choice. Everyone would target me. Did you betray the Potters to Lord Voldemort? Never. James was my brother in all but blood. I would have died first. Did you kill Peter Pettigrew and those muggles? No. Peter shouted that I had betrayed Lily and James, then cut off his own finger, cast a blasting curse, and transformed into his rat animagus form to escape through the sewer. Pettigrew was an animagus? Bones asked, surprised. Yes. Unregistered. A rat. We all became animagi to help Remus during his transformations. James was a stag. I'm a large black dog. Harry emerged from the memory, stunned. He's innocent. Completely innocent. And never given a chance to prove it, Bones agreed grimly. This is a catastrophic failure of magical justice. Can you get him released? Harry asked eagerly. Not immediately. These memories are compelling but not admissible without proper procedure. We need to bring formal charges against the Ministry for wrongful imprisonment, demand a trial, and present evidence properly. How long will that take? Months, at best, Moody growled. Ministry moves slower than a cursed tortoise when admitting mistakes. But we've begun the process, Bones assured him. I've filed the initial paperwork as head of the DMLE, citing new evidence. The first hearing is scheduled for January. The investigation into Peter Pettigrew's possible survival proved more challenging. If the man had been living as a rat for 9 years, he could be anywhere. But Moody had a theory. Pettigrew's a coward, he declared during their December update meeting. Won't risk being on his own, not with both sides wanting him dead. He'd seek protection, a wizarding family, most likely. One where a rat wouldn't draw attention. That could be anywhere, Harry pointed out. Not quite, Bones disagreed. If he wants to stay informed about the wizarding world, he'd choose a connected family. And if he's truly playing the long game, waiting for Voldemort's potential return, he'd want access to information about Dumbledore's movements. They compiled a list of potential families, those connected to the Ministry or Hogwarts, with children who might keep pets, and without strong dark arts detection wards that might identify an animagus. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, through a casual conversation with Ron Weasley during Harry's now regular visits to the burrow. Your rats how old? Harry asked, staring at the fat grey rodent sleeping in Ron's pocket. Dunno exactly. Been in the family forever. Percy had him first, then gave him to me when he got his owl for making prefect. Dad says he's at least 10 years old. 10 years? Harry kept his voice casual. That's unusual for a rat, isn't it? Ron shrugged. Mum says it's because he's a wizard's pet. They live longer, like owls and cats. Harry studied the sleeping rat more carefully. It was missing a toe on one front paw. That evening, he sent an urgent message to Moody and Bones, who responded immediately with a plan. 2 days later, during Harry's next visit to the burrow, they arrived for what they described to the Weasleys as a routine magical creature inspection. Ministry regulations, Moody growled, his magical eye fixed unervingly on Ron's pocket where Scabbers dozed. Need to check all non-standard magical pets. Scabbers? Ron protested. He's just an ordinary rat. Then this will only take a moment, Bones said soothingly, drawing her wand. A simple revealing charm. The spell she cast was anything but simple, a complex animagus reversal that hit the startled rat as it tried to flee from Ron's pocket. The transformation was immediate and horrifying. Where the rat had been, a short, balding man with small watery eyes appeared, crouched on the Weasleys' kitchen floor. Chaos erupted. Molly Weasley screamed, Arthur drew his wand, and the Weasley children scattered for cover. Pettigrew made a desperate lunge for the door, but Moody's stunner hit him squarely in the back. Peter Pettigrew, Bones announced formally, binding the unconscious man with magical restraints. Alive and in hiding, exactly as Sirius Black claimed. The capture of Pettigrew changed everything. The Ministry could no longer ignore the mounting evidence, and an emergency session of the Wisengamot was called for early January. Harry, as the son of the victims, was permitted to attend. The hearing was dramatic. Pettigrew, under Veritaserum, confessed to everything, betraying the Potters, framing Sirius, and living as a rat with the Weasleys to monitor wizarding news. The court had no choice but to exonerate Sirius Black and order his immediate release from Azkaban. When Harry finally met his godfather officially, it was in a private room at St. Mungo's Hospital, where Sirius was recovering from nearly a decade of Dementor exposure. Despite his gaunt appearance and the shadows haunting his eyes, Sirius lit up at the sight of Harry. "Look at you," he whispered hoarsely. "James's face but Lily's eyes, you've grown so much, pup." Harry approached the bed hesitantly. This man was a stranger, yet legally his guardian, magically his godfather through a binding wizard's oath. "I'm sorry," Sirius continued, his voice breaking. "I failed you. Went after Peter instead of staying to protect you. Worst mistake of my life." "You didn't know what would happen," Harry offered. "Should have known. Should have been smarter." Sirius reached out a trembling hand. "Can you ever forgive me?" Harry took the offered hand, feeling an unexpected surge of connection. "There's nothing to forgive. You were loyal to my parents until the end. You just trusted the wrong person." Their relationship grew tentatively over the following weeks. Sirius remained at St. Mungo's, undergoing intensive healing for both physical and psychological trauma. Harry visited regularly, sometimes with Andromeda, who was Sirius's cousin, another connection Harry hadn't known about, bringing books, games, and most importantly, photographs and memories of James and Lily. "Your father could transform into a stag by the time he was 15, Sirius told him during one visit, eyes bright with recalled mischief. "We became animagi illegally to keep Remus company during full moons." "Remus?" "Remus Lupin. Our other best friend. He's a werewolf, has been since childhood. Dumbledore made special arrangements for him to attend Hogwarts safely." "Where is he now?" Harry asked eagerly. "Can I meet him?" Sirius's expression darkened. "Don't know. We lost touch after everything. He probably believed I was guilty, like everyone else." Andromeda promised to help locate Remus, adding another task to the growing project that had become reclaiming Harry's connections. Meanwhile, Harry's other investigations continued. The mysterious Department of Mystery's presence at Godric's Hollow remained unexplained, but Bones had developed a theory. "The prophecy orb," she explained during a meeting at Privet Drive. "Every prophecy made is recorded in the Hall of Prophecy. Only those named in the prophecy can retrieve it. I believe an unspeakable came to confirm the prophecy's activation after Voldemort's defeat and possibly to examine the unique magical protection your mother created." "Can I access this prophecy orb?" Harry asked. "Technically, yes. But the Department of Mysteries is highly restricted. We'd need special clearance, which means involving more Ministry officials, which risks alerting Dumbledore. Who we still don't entirely trust," Harry concluded. "Precisely. The headmaster's motives remain complex." The Sirius situation complicated matters further. Once physically recovered, Sirius would legally have primary claim as Harry's guardian, superseding both the Dursleys and Andromeda's position as magical guardian. "But the blood protection requires me to live with Aunt Petunia," Harry pointed out during a strategy session with Sirius, Andromeda, and surprisingly, Petunia herself. "Only until you're 17, Sirius countered. "And only during the summer. The rest of the year, you should be with family who actually want you." Petunia's lips thinned but she said nothing. Her relationship with Harry had evolved dramatically since the inheritance revelation, moving from active dislike to reluctant respect. She'd even begun sharing more memories of Lily, usually in quiet moments when Vernon and Dudley were out. She was brilliant at anything she tried, Petunia had told Harry one afternoon. showing him a childhood drawing Lily had made that somehow captured the exact way light filtered through leaves. Even before the magic showed itself, she was special. I was jealous. Terribly, awfully jealous. The compromise they eventually reached satisfied all parties. Harry would remain officially resident at Privet Drive during summers until his 17th birthday, spending 2 weeks there to renew the blood protection. The remainder of his non-Hogwarts time would be split between Sirius's newly purchased home in London and his various Potter properties. We'll make it official once I'm cleared for independent living, Sirius promised. The mind healers say another month should do it. The publicity surrounding Sirius's exoneration and Pettigrew's capture brought Harry's situation back into the wizarding spotlight. The Daily Prophet ran a front-page story titled, Boy Who Lived Right's Historical Wrong, Harry Potter Investigation Frees Innocent Godfather. The attention was not all positive. Harry received his first threatening letter in February, an anonymous note containing only the words, Dark Lord's enemies will pay, and a charm that, had he opened it normally, would have covered him in painful boils. Fortunately, after Moody's paranoid but practical security training, Harry now checked all his mail with detection spells before touching it. Death Eater sympathizers, Moody growled when shown the neutralized letter. Still plenty of them around, watching, waiting. Malfoy, Nott, Crabbe, Goyle, all claimed Imperius after Voldemort fell, but convenient excuse, that their children will be in my year at Hogwarts, Harry realized. I watched them closely. Apple doesn't fall far from the poisonous tree. The threats escalated gradually. A second letter contained a more dangerous hex. A third carried traces of a mild contact poison. By April, Bones insisted on implementing full security protocols for Harry's mail and movements. We've identified at least 3 former Death Eater families taking an unhealthy interest in your activities, she explained. The Sirius Black situation has made some nervous. They fear what else your investigations might uncover. Harry took the threat seriously but refused to be intimidated. With Sirius now recovered enough to leave St. Mungo's, they accelerated plans to establish a secure location, a true safe house where Harry could study, train, and prepare for Hogwarts. They selected the Potter property in Devon, a modestly sized country house with expansive grounds, existing magical protections, and a location remote enough for privacy but accessible enough for visitors. We'll layer the security, Sirius declared, walking the perimeter with Moody. Blood wards tied to Harry, anti-apparition barriers, intruder detection charms, the works. Don't forget magical signature recognition, Moody added. Want to know if anyone with a dark mark approaches within a mile. Harry found the security measures reassuring rather than alarming. For the first time in his life, adults were taking his safety seriously without using it as an excuse to control or manipulate him. The difference was striking. The Devon house quickly transformed into Harry's primary residence outside of Privet Drive. Nipsey and 2 other Potter house elves restored the long-empty house to pristine condition, creating spaces specifically designed for Harry's needs, a library for his growing collection of magical texts, a potions laboratory modeled after his mother's workspace, a dueling room for basic spell practice once he received his wand, and comfortable guest rooms for his expanding circle of supporters. It was in this secure environment that Harry began his most intensive preparation for Hogwarts. Andromeda arranged for specialized tutors to visit weekly, not to teach spells, which would remain impossible until he had a wand and was exempt from underage magic restrictions, but to build the theoretical foundation for advanced magical understanding. Master Pasternak, a retired arithmancy professor, introduced Harry to the mathematical principles underlying spell creation. Madam Winters, a historian specializing in magical anthropology, taught him about wizard cultural traditions and political structures. Professor Viridi, a herbologist, started Harry on identifying and understanding magical plants, which required no wand work. Most valuable was Healer Atwell, who specialized in mind magic and continued the occlumency training Andromeda had begun. Under her guidance, Harry learned to organize his thoughts, protect his memories, and most crucially, manage the connection to Voldemort that had flared twice more since the initial incident. The link is growing stronger, Atwell observed during one session. Which suggests Voldemort himself is regaining strength. I keep seeing forests, Harry explained. And feeling hunger. Desperate, consuming hunger. He seeks a body, the healer theorized. The wraith form is unsustainable long-term. Harry redoubled his study of his mother's countermeasures research, searching for ways to use the connection against Voldemort without exposing himself to possession or mental influence. The work was complex, combining obscure branches of magic few adult wizards understood, but Harry persevered. This was his mother's legacy, her final gift to him, and he was determined to master it. As his 11th birthday approached, Harry felt increasingly confident in his preparation. He had a support network, financial independence, physical security, and a growing understanding of the wizarding world he was about to enter officially. But there remained one significant confrontation he couldn't postpone any longer, a direct meeting with Dumbledore to establish clear boundaries before Hogwarts. The meeting was arranged for mid-July at the Devon House, neutral territory where Harry felt secure but Dumbledore would be treated respectfully as a guest. Sirius insisted on being present, as did Andromeda. After some debate, they also invited McGonagall, whose perspective as both Dumbledore's deputy and someone who had shown Harry genuine concern seemed valuable. Dumbledore arrived precisely on time, appearing genuinely impressed as the wards admitted him through recognition of his magical signature. Remarkable craftsmanship, he commented, examining the entry hall's protective runes. Combining the original Potter family wards with black security protocols and modern enhancements. I detect Alastair's paranoid touch as well. Constant vigilance, Harry quoted with a slight smile. Indeed. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled as he surveyed the transformed house. You've created quite a sanctuary here, Harry. Your parents would approve, I think. The meeting began cordially in the library, with refreshments served by an eagerly helpful Nipsey. After initial pleasantries, Harry addressed the central issue directly. I want to discuss expectations for Hogwarts, Professor. I'll be entering as a somewhat unusual student. That would be an understatement, McGonagall remarked dryly. Few first years arrive having already overturned a miscarriage of justice, claimed multiple properties, and established independent study programs. Precisely, Harry agreed. I don't want my situation to create unnecessary tension. But I also won't pretend to be an ordinary student with no knowledge of the wizarding world. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. A reasonable concern. Hogwarts has certain traditions and structures that have served generations of young witches and wizards well. However, I acknowledge that your circumstances are exceptional. Let's be plainly specific, Sirius interjected. Harry won't be subject to your personal oversight beyond what's appropriate for a headmaster. His guardianship matters go through me. His financial decisions involve the goblins. His extracurricular education continues through his approved tutors. And his safety? Dumbledore asked mildly. Hogwarts offers protections few other locations can match, but those protections function best when coordinated through the headmaster. We're not suggesting Harry operate completely independently within Hogwarts, Andromeda clarified. School rules, academic requirements, basic disciplinary structures, those all apply. But attempts to control Harry's correspondence, restrict his visitors, monitor his movements beyond standard curfew, or make decisions about his summer arrangements would exceed appropriate boundaries. I see. Dumbledore's expression remained pleasant, but Harry detected a hint of resignation. You've thought this through quite thoroughly. We've had to, Harry said. Given past events. Indeed. And I have acknowledged my errors in judgment regarding your early years. Dumbledore leaned forward, his expression turning serious. But I must emphasize the very real danger you face, Harry. Voldemort will return, the signs grow clearer each month. When he does, he will target you specifically and immediately. The prophecy ensures it. I'm aware, Harry replied. That's why I've been studying my mother's research, learning occlumency, and building security protocols. I'm not ignoring the threat, I'm addressing it with knowledge rather than isolation. A commendable approach, McGonagall observed. Lily would approve. She would, Dumbledore agreed. But she would also understand, as a member of the Order who faced Voldemort directly, that sometimes individual autonomy must be balanced against strategic necessity. That's where we disagree, Headmaster, Harry said firmly. I believe my autonomy is the strategic necessity. Voldemort expects the boy you were creating, isolated, ignorant, dependent on your guidance. He won't expect what I've become. A spark of genuine intrigue lit Dumbledore's eyes. An interesting perspective. You believe your mother's alternative approach to the prophecy gives you an advantage? I do. And I'm willing to share that research with you, to collaborate on developing it further, but as a partner, not a subordinate. Partners, Dumbledore repeated, testing the word. At 11 and 150-odd years of age. Most unusual. The situation is unusual, Harry pointed out. The prophecy made it so. Fair enough. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. I propose a compromise. At Hogwarts, you will be treated as any other student in matters of academics, house points, and general school rules. Your correspondence and visitors will not be monitored beyond standard security screening. Your special training may continue with approved tutors during designated times that don't interfere with your education. And the prophecy research? Harry pressed. We will meet monthly to discuss progress, share insights, and plan next steps. As partners. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled again. With the understanding that my greater experience with Voldemort and magical theory merits some deference, while your unique connection to the prophecy and your mother's work merits equal consideration. Harry glanced at Sirius and Andromeda, who both gave subtle nods of approval. I can accept those terms, Harry agreed, extending his hand. Dumbledore shook it, his aged hand surprisingly strong. Then we have an accord. I must admit, Harry, I find myself both concerned and impressed by the young man you're becoming. Very different from what I expected, yet perhaps better suited to the challenges ahead than I had imagined possible. That's the point, Harry said simply. The unexpected approach might be our best weapon. After Dumbledore and McGonagall departed, Sirius clapped Harry on the shoulder. Well handled, pup. You stood your ground without creating an enemy. Dumbledore will test the boundaries, of course, it's his nature, but you've established a framework he'll find difficult to ignore outright. He seemed genuinely interested in Mum's research, Harry noted. Of course he is, Andromeda said. Albus Dumbledore is many things, but no one has ever accused him of ignoring potentially groundbreaking magical theory. If Lily truly found an alternative approach to fulfilling the prophecy, he'd be intellectually compelled to explore it. The remaining weeks before Harry's Hogwarts letter arrived passed in a blur of activity. Sirius finally located Remus Lupin, who had been living in self-imposed exile in a remote part of Scotland. Their reunion was emotional, Remus initially resistant due to guilt over believing Sirius guilty, Sirius equally remorseful for suspecting Remus might have been the traitor. Harry met his father's last living true friend with a mixture of eagerness and caution. Remus proved to be a gentle, scholarly man whose prematurely lined face and shabby clothes belied a sharp intellect and warm humor. You have Lily's way of questioning, he observed after their first long conversation. Always seeking the underlying principle, never satisfied with, that's just how it works as an answer. Harry treasured these new connections to his parents, Sirius's stories of his father's bravery and mischief, Remus's recollections of his mother's brilliance and compassion, even Petunia's reluctant but increasingly detailed memories of Lily's childhood. She made a flower bloom in her palm when she was 9, Petunia recalled during one of their now regular conversations about Lily. Just concentrated, and it appeared, a perfect lily. I was so jealous I didn't speak to her for days. Childish, really. Did you ever try? Harry asked. To make a flower bloom. Petunia's expression tightened. Once. Nothing happened, of course. That's when I knew for certain I was. Ordinary. I don't think you're ordinary, Harry said carefully. You've raised 2 boys, managed a household, and adapted to learning your nephew is part of a hidden magical world. That takes strength. The small compliment seemed to startle Petunia, who quickly changed the subject. But Harry noticed she seemed less bitter when discussing magic after that conversation. His Hogwarts letter arrived exactly on his 11th birthday, delivered by a standard barn owl during breakfast at Privet Drive. Though expected, seeing the green-inked address made the upcoming transition suddenly, intensely real. Mr. H. Potter, the 2nd bedroom 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. Still monitoring your location, I see, Sirius noted with a frown, visiting for the birthday celebration. Old habits die hard with Dumbledore. The letter contained the standard welcome, school supply list, and notification that term began on September 1st. A handwritten note from McGonagall was enclosed as well. Mr. Potter, while you are already familiar with Diagon Alley, I traditionally escort Muggle-raised students for their first official supplies shopping. If you would find this helpful, please respond with a convenient date. If you prefer to make your own arrangements, that is also acceptable. Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress, thoughtful of her, Andromeda commented. And a good opportunity to establish a positive relationship with your future head of house, assuming you're Gryffindor-bound like your parents. Harry hadn't given much thought to Hogwarts houses, being more focused on practical preparations. Is that expected? That I'll be in Gryffindor? The wizarding world certainly expects it, Remus said. The boy who lived, son of 2 prominent Gryffindors, the narrative practically writes itself. But the Sorting Hat makes the actual decision, right? Harry confirmed. Based on my own qualities, not expectations. That's the tradition, Sirius agreed. Though it does consider your preferences too. I asked for Gryffindor specifically, anything to break the Black family Slytherin tradition. Harry considered this. I don't really have a preference. Each house has valuable traits. His birthday celebration expanded far beyond anything he'd experienced at the Dursleys previously. Vernon and Dudley maintained an awkward but not hostile presence, while a steady stream of wizarding visitors arrived throughout the day, the Weasley family bringing homemade gifts, the Longbottoms with rare herbology books, the Bones family with practical defensive items. Most surprising was the arrival of Draco Malfoy with his mother, Narcissa. The blonde boy Harry had met briefly at a ministry function approached with practiced formality. Heir Potter, he greeted with a slight bow. Best wishes on your natal day. Mother and I bring greetings from the noble house of Malfoy. Harry returned the formal greeting he'd learned from Andromeda. Heir Malfoy, Madame Malfoy. You honor my home with your presence. Narcissa, a striking blonde woman whose features revealed her Black family connection to Sirius and Andromeda, offered a thin smile. Cousin Sirius, it has been some time. Indeed, Narcissa, Sirius replied coolly. Not since your husband testified I was a devoted Death Eater, if memory serves. The tension crackled until Harry smoothly intervened. I understand Heir Malfoy will be in my year at Hogwarts. Perhaps we'll share classes. Undoubtedly, Draco said, seeming relieved at the redirect. Father expects I'll be in Slytherin, of course. Family tradition. Like the Blacks, Harry noted. Though Sirius broke tradition. Every family has its outliers, Narcissa commented delicately. We were surprised to receive your invitation, considering the historical tensions. I'm not interested in inheriting old conflicts, Harry stated clearly. Judgments should be based on present actions, not past associations. This diplomatic response seemed to surprise both Malfoys. Narcissa's calculating expression suggested she was re-evaluating her assessment of Harry, while Draco appeared genuinely curious. An interesting perspective, Narcissa said finally. One that speaks to a broader education than many anticipated for you. The implied question about Harry's upbringing remained unanswered as more guests arrived. The Malfoys did not stay long but left behind an exquisitely wrapped package containing a set of self-inking quills made from exotic feathers. Testing the waters, Sirius muttered after they departed. Lucius is too smart to openly oppose the boy who lived if there's an alternative approach available. They're hedging their bets, Andromeda agreed. If Voldemort returns, they'll claim they were infiltrating your circle. If he doesn't, they've established a connection to a politically valuable ally. And Draco? Harry asked. Where does he stand? Too young to have independent politics, Andromeda sighed. But old enough to be thoroughly indoctrinated in his father's views. Still, children can surprise you. My own break from the Black family traditions wasn't predictable. The birthday gathering concluded with a cake that nearly rivaled Harry's excitement for the day, a flying model of Hogwarts Castle, complete with illuminated windows and tiny animated figures moving across the grounds. Molly Weasley and Andromeda had collaborated on the magical confection, which drew gasps of admiration from all the guests, and a strangled noise of alarm from Vernon. After everyone departed, Harry found himself alone in his bedroom, examining his Hogwarts letter again. Despite all his preparation, the enormity of the transition ahead struck him fully. In just over a month, he would enter a world his parents had inhabited, facing expectations and challenges they had never anticipated for their son. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, expecting Sirius or perhaps Remus. To his surprise, Aunt Petunia entered, carrying a small, worn wooden box. "I've been meaning to give you this," she said awkwardly. With all the magical presents today, it seemed inadequate. "But it was your mother's, and you should have it." She placed the box on his bed and stepped back. Harry opened it carefully to find a delicate silver charm bracelet with a single charm, a miniature silver book that, when opened, projected a tiny holographic lily flower. "Her first piece of deliberate magic, preserved," Petunia explained. "Our parents had a jeweler capture it in that charm when she was 12. She wore it until..." She trailed off. "Until Voldemort started targeting Muggle-born witches and wizards," Harry finished. "And she couldn't risk wearing something so obviously magical outside safe areas." Petunia nodded. "She left it with me for safekeeping just before you were born. Said she'd reclaim it when this is all over." But it never was over, not for her. Harry held the bracelet reverently. "Thank you for keeping it safe all these years. It means more than any of the magical gifts." Petunia's expression softened momentarily. "You're welcome. And, good luck at that school. Do better than hiding in their world like she did. Change it." It was perhaps the most supportive thing she'd ever said to him regarding magic. Harry impulsively hugged her, a brief, awkward embrace that she endured with surprised stillness before patting his back once and withdrawing. "Yes, well. Enough sentimentality. There's still cake downstairs if you want more." After she left, Harry carefully fastened the charm bracelet around his wrist. It adjusted magically to fit perfectly, the book charm warming slightly against his skin as if recognizing a connection to its creator. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of practical preparations for Hogwarts. Harry accepted McGonagall's offer to accompany him for his official school shopping, though he'd already acquired many items over the previous months. "I've never escorted a student who already has accounts at most shops in the alley," she commented dryly as they moved efficiently through their purchases. "Sorry to disappoint," Harry replied with a smile. "I could pretend to be amazed by everything if you'd prefer the full first-year experience." McGonagall's lips twitched. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Potter. Though I admit I am looking forward to your reaction to Ollivander's. Wand selection is always unique, even for the most prepared students." The wand-maker's shop proved worthy of anticipation. Ollivander himself emerged from the shadows like an apparition, his silvery eyes fixed unervingly on Harry. "I've been expecting you, Mr. Potter. Though I confess, I sense you're not quite the boy I anticipated meeting." The wand selection process was lengthy and increasingly dramatic. Dozens of wands produced effects ranging from shattered vases to spontaneous bird conjurations before Ollivander finally presented a holly and phoenix feather combination. The moment Harry grasped it, golden sparks showered from the tip, illuminating the dusty shop with warm light. A sense of rightness, of connection, flowed through him. "Curious," Ollivander murmured. "Most curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked, though he suspected the answer. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix whose tail feather resides in your wand gave just one other feather. Just one. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, why, its brother gave you that scar." McGonagall inhaled sharply beside him. "Voldemort's wand," Harry stated. "He who must not be named did great things with that wand." "Terrible, yes, but great. I think we can expect similarly remarkable magic from you, Mr. Potter, though I sense your path may diverge significantly from the expected." Harry paid the 7 galleons, considering the implications. His mother's research had mentioned magical resonance between connected objects. Would the brother wands create additional effects beyond the core connection he already shared with Voldemort? "Professor," he asked as they left the shop, "what do you know about brother wands?" McGonagall's expression was troubled. "Not enough to speculate responsibly. This is a matter to discuss with the headmaster, and perhaps with Mr. Ollivander again under less cryptic circumstances." Their final stop was Elop's Owl Emporium, where Harry selected a beautiful snowy owl he named Hedwig after a witch mentioned in A History of Magic. "A most distinctive familiar," McGonagall approved. "Though I should warn you that snowy owls are not the most discreet for secret correspondence." "I'm not planning much secret correspondence," Harry replied honestly. "Most people who'd want to intercept my mail already know who I'm in regular contact with." As September 1st approached, Harry finalized arrangements for his trunk, a special multi-compartment model with security features, his familiar's comfort. Hedwig had already claimed territory at both Privet Drive and the Devon House, and his ongoing studies. His tutors had provided specialized materials to continue foundational work alongside Hogwarts curriculum. The night before departure, Harry hosted a small dinner at the Devon House. Sirius, Remus, Andromeda, and unexpectedly, Petunia, who had asked to see "This house you're always disappearing to." Vernon had declined with visible relief, volunteering to take Dudley to a boxing match instead. "Remember," Sirius advised over dessert, "the castle has secrets even the marauders never fully mapped. The room of requirement on the 7th floor, we only discovered it in our final year. Could be useful for private study or meetings." "And the kitchens," Remus added. "Behind the fruit bowl painting. Tickle the pair to enter. The house elves are always happy to provide snacks for studying students." Andromeda offered more practical counsel. "Build relationships across houses early. The sorting creates artificial divisions that become hard barriers by 3rd year. And remember, professors have their own politics and prejudices. Understand their perspectives before challenging them." Petunia, who had remained largely silent while touring the magical house, finally spoke. "Write to us. To me. Let me know how you're getting on." The simple request, so at odds with the woman who had once forbidden the mention of magic, demonstrated how profoundly circumstances had changed. "I will," Harry promised. "Every week." The journey to Hogwarts began traditionally. Vernon reluctantly drove Harry to King's Cross Station, where Sirius was waiting to escort him through the barrier to platform 9 3/4. The platform bustled with activity, students greeting friends, parents giving last-minute instructions, owls hooting indignantly at the commotion. "Remember," Sirius said, straightening Harry's collar unnecessarily, "you're not alone there. You've got friends already, Ron, Neville, Susan. You've got allies among the staff, McGonagall, Flitwick, even Dumbledore in his complicated way. And enemies," Harry added realistically. "Snape. Possibly Quirrell, according to your sources." "Potential threats," Sirius corrected. "Maintain vigilance without assuming malice. And keep your mirror on you at all times. Any problem, day or night, call me." The enchanted communication mirrors had been enhanced with additional protections, allowing secure conversations that couldn't be monitored by conventional magical means. As the train whistle sounded, Harry hugged his godfather fiercely. "Thanks for everything, Sirius." "Just doing what James and Lily would have wanted," Sirius replied, voice rough with emotion. "Go show them what the son of a marauder and the brightest witch of her age can do." Harry boarded the train, finding the compartment where Ron Weasley was already saving seats. As the Hogwarts Express pulled away from the platform, Harry caught a final glimpse of Sirius, standing tall and proud, so different from the broken man who had emerged from Azkaban months earlier. The countryside rolled by as Harry chatted with Ron and greeted other students he knew, Neville joining their compartment, Hermione Granger introducing herself with enthusiastic curiosity, even Draco Malfoy stopping by for a carefully neutral exchange. "Different from what you expected?" Neville asked quietly after Draco departed. "Everything is," Harry admitted. "A year ago I was living in a cupboard, wearing Dudley's cast-offs, with no idea magic existed. Now you're Harry Potter," Ron said simply. "The boy who lived, heir to the Potter fortune, friend of goblins, exonerator of Sirius Black, and according to my brothers, the kid who made Dumbledore himself back down at the Wizengamot." Harry grimaced. "The stories get exaggerated. But not entirely untrue," Neville noted shrewdly. "Gran says you've accomplished more before starting Hogwarts than most wizards do in a lifetime." "I've had help," Harry insisted. "Lots of it." "That's its own kind of talent," Hermione chimed in from behind her book. "Recognizing when to accept help and from whom." As the train continued northward, Harry found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From a neglected, ignorant child to an informed, supported young wizard preparing to enter the magical world on his terms. From a passive recipient of fate to an active shaper of his destiny. The prophecy still loomed. Voldemort still threatened. Countless challenges undoubtedly lay ahead. But Harry was no longer facing them alone or unprepared. He touched his mother's charm bracelet, feeling the comforting warmth of the magical connection to Lily. The past months had been about reclaiming his heritage, his properties, his connections, his rightful place in the wizarding world. But perhaps more importantly, he'd reclaimed the legacy his parents had always intended for him: knowledge, preparation, and the freedom to choose his own path. As Hogwarts Castle appeared on the horizon, its towers silhouetted against the twilight sky, Harry Potter smiled. He was ready. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.